Hi guys, and welcome to the Top Tier Tiers Banlist Roundtable. I'm one of your hosts, Lychee Punnet, whatever you want to say. I'm a old man clawing for relevance in the wild, wild world of Weish thoughts. With me, we've got some regulars. We've got Tim Tom, the guy who records these casts.
I love the smell of Weiss in
Yeah.
the morning.
Would you open, like a Dr.
A
Pepper?
cold one.
A cold one. Well, you are suddenly with some boys. I don't know if they're your boys.
It's a hoedown.
One of said boys. It's celednb.
Hello.
So for those who don't tune into our normal cast, and I don't blame you, they're really long. Where are you from?
I'm from Europe. Yeah.
Europe is a country, and people speak French there. Next, we've got a few guests that we've pulled on for the cast. We've got Illya.
Hello.
He's our. So, what are you representing again? It's like Singapore, isn't it?
Yeah, because of my one trip to Singapore, I'll be talking about them.
Yeah.
He's also from Canada.
On Singapore.
He's also from Canada, so we can talk about Canada
Yes.
stuff as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've got we've got Zabuton or Zab. He's been on before.
Hi. I think
Yes,
I'm representing Sydney/Japan to some level.
Yes, I think so. You can represent Australia as far as I'm concerned. I don't know very much about the meta anymore.
I'll do that.
Yeah, you do that. We've got Honeythief.
Hello, everyone. I'm
Yes.
from France, but I live in Japan, so I just see what's going on here.
You know, the more people I introduce, the more confusing this really gets. So, you're from Japan. You've participated in some WGPs. You can give us a bit of an insider scoop on what the locals are like, in addition to the WGPs. I think.
Yep.
And then we have someone here who is basically here to corral things. And you know that's because he's from Texas and they corral things there. We've got Pattywagon.
I'm Pattywagon, but yeah, I'll be moderating. If the dialogue's going in circles, I interrupt, but ideally, I'm not going to talk very much. I spent a year on the East Coast, the U.S. and Virginia, but mostly play in Texas.
He's basically the fun police, but that's fine. We need a fun police. Because this cast could very well get very angry very quickly. Tier lists are very controversial. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. I'll quickly cover what we're going to be discussing. Firstly, we're going to talk about the diversity of metagames, because the world at large is it's pretty different. Like, we've got Japan, which does Japan things, but then we've also got a number of other regions, all of which have different players, different competent players who have different thoughts on the game, and that ends up shaping their metagame. Then we'll talk a bit about the actual ban list that happened not too long ago, like a week ago, and is currently the rule set for Weiss, and some of the sets that are affected by it. Then we'll move on to what has historically been the meat of our discussions. I think we're trying to trim it down this year. The tier lists of everyone here involved, as well as a couple of other people who couldn't be on the cast, but wanted to put their 2 cents in. And we'll talk about some sets which might differ from the popular consensus, or more specifically, the Japanese consensus as to what the best decks are.
Yeah.
Following that,
Basically,
we'll have
also our
go on.
consensus. Like
Our consensus.
Yes. These
Yeah,
sets that we're gonna talk about are differently rated between us.
Yes. So I'm not going to lie, there has always been a circle jerk element with these casts, but that's why we've gone out of our way to find people from different regions, different walks of Weiss, and different opinions to have a bit of a civil discussion on why each person believes what they believe. And there are certainly a diversity of opinions in our cast members. And then we'll finish off with a bit of a thought on where we're going from here. Maybe a thought on some of the sets that have upcoming releases and how they might be improved. And maybe a hoedown at the end, apparently. So, yeah, let's get stuck into it. the first thing I guess we talk about is the metagame since the last ban list in Japan, the February 2019 ban list. Is that right? Whichever ban list had the Hinalogi and Sunshine hits.
Yeah, it's that
Yes.
one. February.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we'll just talk about
just to go on.
we'll just talk about the different regions in turn, actually.
Since sure.
Then.
So just to refresh everyone on that ban list, what happened was the Japan dominating Hinalogi deck with the level 3 Yuko Advanced Summon Trance was hit and put on a place, choose one of. So the Trance Engine and the Trance Target were your choices. And then Love Live Sunshine was hit as well with what was the exact hit? It was they changed the pick 103 and restricted your Yo burner to only be a single copy. It's been a while. I've already settled into the new Love Live Sunshine zone. So if I'm wrong, I think that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yes, that's what happened. We have a ban list.
Yeah,
we have an image from last time. Still, if you...
Yeah. All right.
I think you forgot to mention Bang Dream actually.
I did forget to mention Bang Dream. Yep. So yeah, so they hit the extremely frustrating stock swap combo that a few other sets still boast, but no set with as consistent card quality as Bang Dream. That is a very important hit, I think, because it does lead us into a pretty important discussion as to why Bang Dream is still so prevalent and popular. So let's get started. So let's talk about the Japanese meta. Our Japanese representative Honeythief get started on it. We do have some infographics. I think they'll be available in the show notes for those curious. But without further ado, take it away.
Yeah, so one thing that I found really interesting, and compared to the discussion for the previous ban list, is that with the limitation of either being able to have the alarm or Yuko, a lot of people were saying, okay, well, Heat Logic is dead and we're not going to see it anymore. But at least one thing I saw here, which was pretty interesting, is that since there were a lot more decks that were playing standby and just having out, big 1/1s, big 2/2s, it becomes actually really easy to play, what's her name, Nina, into it, because even though she gets a soul, you just side, and you're able to remove soul from the other attack and not necessarily get cancelled. I remember the first opinion of when people saw that Nina was, no, you're swinging for 4, you're swinging for 5, it's useless. But I think that the fact that standby is really popular here actually just helped bring Nina up to the forefront.
To clarify, you're like siding stuff with the
yeah.
Okay.
Because you get the extra
playing
soul in
climax.
attack.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I think that the climaxes were a big trap. When most people first evaluated Nina in the context of set 1,
Mm-hmm.
it was all in the context of playing the combo, and most people therefore dismissed it because the combo is just treading water, which is not the best way to win at Weiss, especially not in a format where little soul, little tempo edges matter. So it ended up just being a deck that wanted to put out really big things with marginal soul advantage, and Nina seemed to fit that slot pretty well. Which is, why it continued to dominate, why it continued to be extremely powerful against decks that could not deal with it. And I think I'm going to be perfectly frank. Some of the examples of people playing against Tina Logic that we've seen on the internet, there was one specific WGP final that I'm thinking of where I was physically unable to keep watching because I was so upset about how they were playing against Tina Logic. I think that the deck is so strong that it makes people do very silly things, which is it is a strength of the deck. I absolutely think that. But I also think that if people, learn to deal with Hina Logic a bit better, we might have been able to avoid this ban list. That being said, was it very popular where you're from? Because you're not from a big region like Tokyo or...
Yeah, and that's the thing. So in where I'm at, not that many people play it. but I think that's just it's the same everywhere. So I went to a few other cities and played in a bunch of WGPs, but like not that many people play Hina Logic. And I think that that's probably why they actually hit it, because the representation I don't think is that high. We don't have the data yet, but like not many people play it, and it's still tops. And you know, if few people play it, it still tops for like a year, then you know they're gonna have to do something. So I think that's why the alarm got banned this time.
Hinology had the best conversion of all sets.
Yeah.
Yes,
We do have the
far,
graph.
was-
We do have the graph in this slideshow. So if you want to look at that.
Oh, it's in there now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
it
see.
was by far the best conversion because it wasn't highly repped, people were not playing specific cards for it. And to be fair, even though Hinologic Strength is a relatively generic feature of a lot of decks, advanced summons, its advanced summons are so strong and so frequently triple laned that it's basically a different deck altogether to a lot of the decks that aim to double early play or whatever. So unless you do warp your deck, as I'm sure, like Zabuton specifically has been a big advocate of this particular ban, unless you warp your deck in a way that weakens it against a lot of other decks, it's hard to properly deal with Logic. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Zabu?
No, I feel like you've covered most of what you want to say. What I want to say. I guess if I could say one thing about that specific finals, I think it's Sapporo. Yeah. That guy had 2 of the Ellie Andy change bomb in his hand, which is kind of why he didn't want to attack on that turn to push his opponent to 3, because it pretty much means that he has no answers to those cards until he draws into the bounce. What's the other girl called again?
Nero.
Yeah, that girl. So yeah, I can say the reasoning, but I guess we should probably discuss that in a different position.
Yeah, just to note, I don't think people were that weirded out by that, but rather that he kept attacking or not attacking or siding multiple times at level 1 to keep the opponent at 1-5, 1-4. So to strand him there and to like run him out of resources, I guess was his plan.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of that, and sort of that he doesn't want to have 2 completely dead cards in his hand. There's actually commentary by the Hina Logic player, so if that interests you, I guess we can try and find that sometime.
You can have that link in the description if anybody's interested in seeing that.
Yeah, I think we're straying off the conversation, so I'll go back.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it all comes back to the point that Hina Logic is so dominant that you have to play in a very specific way to deal with it, which is a historically.
I disagree, but like let's go back to the meta thing from
Sure.
Honey.
Are we ready for you?
I mean, was there anything else? Well, you said Logic
and then-
wasn't popular, right? But what was popular?
So there's one last thing about the meta here that I've kind of noticed, just at the locals level and just what most people play, is that standby is really popular. A lot of people just keep playing standby and standby for everything. And also clean cuts are big here. So if your deck has standby or clean cut, it's probably being played massively. So yeah, that's just what I've noticed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, those two kind of complement each other. Standby is this tempo negative play from your hand that sets up for later turns and hopefully slows the game down, while clean cut is basically a free stock soul on turn 2 in that you get to commit without actually committing. So you can see how those two kind of work together. They're just powerful individual effects. But I am a very well-known proponent of standby not being a particularly good play from hand. Is it really played from hand that often?
Yeah. And I think, well, yeah, I've, at least from what I've seen, especially I think the 8 standby decks are the or what show this, but they'll just play standby at every turn once they have it. It doesn't matter. So yeah.
Well,
it's just very popular.
one of the advantages of 8 standby is that you are very going to consistently standby quite a lot. Because every trigger is a standby, and every time you play from hand is a standby. I also think that most standby decks want to play standby from hand as every copy they draw is probably one that they want to play from the hand until maybe some point in level 2 at least. So that's
Yeah,
pretty fair.
absolutely. Like
Yeah.
absolutely. If you play 8 standby, the intention is to consistently get the standby effect as much as possible. That's just much better than standby in pants, for example. So you build your deck around it, and if you can snowball enough and get enough standby effects off, then you can have this enormous field. We see that with I think Fujimi is probably the best example of a good 8 standby deck that just kind of steamrolls the opponent if they're unprepared. And I think that because of standby's popularity, it's slowly pushing down decks that have reliance on reverse combos. So a deck like Attack on Titan or a deck like Konosuba, which would they were very highly rated by Japan previously, but they've both kind of fallen down a little bit because if they stand by out this massive thing and then get 2 lanes that are hard for a union or whatever to kid over, it's a bit hard to have your game plan go as you plan it.
Yeah, you have been getting level 1 standby combos as well that you have to play from hand. There's been a few recently. And since a lot of people are just playing standby and they're not pushing for that much soul, it's become normal, I guess. So
Yeah,
I think that we're going to start playing more.
Yeah, when everybody is playing a slow game, the one who plays the slower game, like if you, the one who gets bigger basically wins, and then like if everybody's playing slow, you playing slow doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
You're having a slow win condition.
absolutely.
Sure. I guess we can swap to
another.
Europe unless Ken wants to say something about Japan still.
I think you were saying that AOT and Konosuba level 1 combos have fallen off a bit. There is definitely a trend in the Japanese meta where if you're not playing a standby deck, your level 1 combo has to generate quite a bit of card advantage or has a good position in the current meta, I think.
Right,
So,
like Fever, for example.
Yeah, Fever is one example. I think Goblin Slayer also.
Goblin Slayer is the example I think that everyone else is thinking of.
That one doesn't net you that many cards, but the fact that it's 7k on defense behind a 2k counter is quite noticeable.
Well, I think it breaks the rules, right? Typically,
almost,
level 1 combos aren't supposed to win.
Yeah. Yes, they're not.
But this one not only does that, but it gets its advantage on attack and not on river, which is like double breaking the rules. It's like double Jeopardy. Yeah,
it's a little curious that that the Overlord combo doesn't really. Is that played very often, the yellow one? Because that one certainly does a similar thing.
Which one's the yellow one again?
Not played at all. Not played at all.
No, I don't think it's played at all.
Standby.
Yeah,
the
that's
fact
the
that
thing,
it's
right?
a shot, I think, is also a deterrent for Japanese players.
It's a wind, I think.
No, it's an 8-shot deck, isn't it?
I thought it was a wind. Overload was a wind, right?
Was it a wind?
Overlord was a wind.
Yeah, Overlord was wind.
Oh wait, sorry, Overlord. I was thinking Goblin Slayer. Silly me. Yeah, I forgot.
Oh yeah.
Oh
No.
no. Mono yellow Goblin Slayer is I don't think it's actually a deck worth talking about. Top end does not make a deck good enough, unfortunately. Yeah, so I think Japan's moved to the point where they just want massive setup fields and they slowly vie for a field advantage. And that's why decks like 8 Standby and Hina Logic are so highly rated.
There's also another thing. I think one big thing that a lot of the top players in Japan like is not dying from 3-0 randomly. So Minus Soul is pretty big. And cards like the 3/3 event in Goblin Slayer, Kadokawa, Melgods, so Sword Art Online, etc., etc. Those would be on the. Those are also one big drawing point to what people are playing in Japan. Sorry, did I cut off?
I guess. No. Like that's fair. There aren't very many Nalgard type cards though, and a lot of them are in sets that have fallen off.
It's
I
interesting.
guess. Yeah.
What I find interesting about that is that like money counter and these guard type cards are actually a lot worse in a meta like Japan, where people don't play explosive finishes, where people try to grind out slow games.
I agree with that as well. I think that in a meta where you have time to set up and become a slow big juggernaut with reasonable compression, a card like Money Counter is just so much less impactful than a stock swap, because just in terms of the effective damage race, like instead of nulling one damage, you're getting in however many hits that you otherwise wouldn't with something like the stock troll in OG Love Live, or I guess Konosuba.
It's not just that, it's that like the things that you're hitting with the card aren't like that strong. Like they still play Yukina, but like something like Mika's, or no, Mika's is a bad example. Something that would be like on reverse, burn one, or like Kotaha, like really impactful. Well, they actually play Kotaha. I don't know what's a good example here.
I mean, any example which is it's just a vanilla hit with like a cancel burn or just an on reverse burn one. Like anything like that is just, look, you're getting less value out of your money counter that way, but you've got to remember, if everyone's playing slow, then you don't really need to get that much value out of money counter. All you need to do is tilt the race in your favor. So I can see why they'd value those cards, because feeling safe is something that a lot of players value extremely highly, even if it's not necessarily the best thing. Like, even if it's not necessarily the best, like, it's a big reason why Persona 5 is still so popular, right? Nothing better than having all these 7.5Ks and then your opponent can't answer any of them, right? Even if that's not the strongest play ever, it feels so good. So yeah, I can see why. I don't necessarily agree, but I see why.
Even if your opponent's only playing a deck that attacks 3 times per turn, if you can stop one attack, you're taking 33% less damage. So,
well, yeah, it's potentially way more than 33%, right? Like,
you get what
like 33. I get what you mean, but like being able to null a 2 from like 3-0 is so valuable, as opposed to nulling like a 5, which probably won't go in. Like, money count is certainly a strong card, and I do agree that it is strong in the circumstance you described, but it's also super strong against like Yukina, which is why it's such a good card.
Yeah, of course.
Do you think that if, like, say there was a lane that was swinging 4 and there was a lane that was swinging 2, and you could money counter either of them,
this is a little
do you
specific.
think that they generally money counter
this is a little
the
specific.
safe lane? Okay, sure, whatever.
I think we should just move.
Well,
we've been here for far too long. It was more like a mindset thing.
Yeah.
Look, let's move to Europe then, shall we?
Yeah. So Europe has this thing called West Schwartz League.
Actually, we can talk about C for a second, because I think C does share a lot of similarities with Japan's meta.
Yeah.
How about we talk about Europe, and then we talk about SCA, and then we compare and contrast.
I think C.
I guess it does.
I think C is a better segue.
It doesn't matter. Let's just
points. Let's just talk about C.
That's fine. Sure. So
we have
that's Killua, right?
Yeah. So my one trip to Singapore, I was able to meet up with some locals in Singapore to play some games. From what I can tell, a lot of their meta does take from Japan. They borrow a lot of decks that Japan is fond of. There's also not a lot of hidden logic there. I don't think I see any hidden logic when I was there. Standbys, is a big thing. I also noticed a lot of P5 and Nanoha when I was there.
That's interesting.
I think it's just, I don't know about P5.
That's just series popularity, right?
Yeah, I think P5 is just a series popularity. Same with like Idolmaster and stuff. And then Nanoha, I feel like it was just because it's new.
Was the P5 8 gate?
No.
Or was it...
P5 was like the Riki top end.
Okay.
I just feel like most of them are picking up new sets just to play around with these days. And then if they're going for like big tournaments, they'll probably pick up some idle stuff like Million Live.
I mean, historically, Singapore has, the Weiss Schwartz community there has fluctuated a lot in how serious it is. Basically, it depends on the a core group of players, whether or not they're taking it seriously or not, like it does with a lot of tight knit but fairly sizable communities, because people copy from the best in their communities, right?
Yeah.
So I think Singapore had a big lull for Weiss Schwartz for a little while. That just people weren't playing it. People were playing Chaos instead. Some people were even picking up, level Neo and PM, Precious Memories. But I think there's been a bit of a resurgence lately. I think that's got to do with a couple series coming over and Bang Dream becoming more and more popular among people in general. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah. Singapore loves their idols.
Yeah, of course. They definitely love their idols. And a lot of the results in Singapore, I think, are related to player skill, because there are definitely a number of old guard players who are just extremely good at, the basics of the game. They can pick up a deck like a Kotoha Million Lives deck or any Bang Dream deck that's constructed properly and pilot it very well, and therefore do quite well. But the thing is, a lot of these players would rather just play decks they enjoy, which can cause some outliers in terms of tops. It applies everywhere, but I think with Singapore, because of the history of Weiss Schwartz there, I think it's a bit more pronounced there than anywhere else, because they've got just the right combination of storied players and not an enormous competitive scene that it bottlenecks at the new players. So you've still got old players that do very well, and you've got newer players who pick up decks and aren't as necessarily technically skilled.
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready?
Also, apparently AOT apparently sucks. So
Yeah, they really hate that.
it doesn't have any idols in it, not even one. Can you believe that?
If it's not waifus, what's the point?
Exactly. Shout outs to Make. You suck.
Guess we're ready to move on to Europe then. We're memeing already.
I think so.
All right. celednb, you can talk about Europe in the middle there.
Okay, so I'll just quickly introduce like the data that we have here. Like we have this thing called Weiss Schwartz League, which happens for like a couple months, or like it happened from January till like September here. And basically across this league, you if you do well, you get points, and the people that are at the top of the point standings get like auto invites for the WGP finals later that year, and people that have semi-high point standings get invited to qualifiers. So basically, it's what feeds into our WGP. And we have like some stat representation. What's important to note here is that like the league is mixed language, as has been said here. So decks that are available in English are gonna have higher rep than they'll actually probably realistically have later on. So like there would be especially SAO, AOT, and I think Konosuba. Those were like the ones that had and AOT.
Love Live Sunshine.
Sunshine is very different in English and in Japanese.
Do they follow the Japanese ban list?
Yes, and English also is missing some sets, but those were the important ones.
Just
overall,
asking, how big is the English scene there compared to the Japanese scene? Let's say.
I think some regions just play English.
I think like said. Spain and Netherlands mostly play English. And for example, Austria mostly plays Japanese. Germany is pretty mixed. France is mostly Japanese, I think. What other regions are there? But it's like fairly mixed, I think. It depends on the region.
Okay, thanks.
And one thing I've noticed, like, I guess I'll look at the topic, but like decks that I've noticed being real, like I know Summer Pockets is really popular. AOT is comparatively popular compared to like the rest of the world. Which might in part be because like you can also play the English deck, and not a lot of people bought Japanese AOT because they already own the English deck. And if they can just play that, then they'll just play AOT because it's for them a good deck, but they might not want to buy the deck a second time. So Summer Pockets, SAO, AOT, Bang Dream, I think those were the highest rep, and those see pretty high rep. And also ReZero and Rewrite still see fairly high rep. Oh, and Konosuba. Sorry, I forgot about Konosuba. So like the main players that I foresee. But something that might change things up a bit is that like SMP, like Summer Pockets, just got kind of, I don't want to say power crept, but the new Sunshine set. The new Sunshine set is basically the same deck as Summer Pockets, but better at like almost every level. It just has better card quality. And I wonder if that's going to lead to a shift of people playing that version of this type of
They're
build.
saying
Of
the
like
Summer Pockets rep might, you know...
Yeah, might drop for the finals.
Might get transferred
Might
over
switch
to
to Sunshine. Yeah.
Okay.
Is Europe competitive enough that people are gonna just buy the deck specifically for that?
Yeah,
cheap,
that's
though.
questionable.
I mean,
that's
the Sunshine deck is really cheap, so I mean,
it's not that cheap. The
I
Mari
don't think
1-0 and the Drop Search are pretty expensive.
Never
There-
mind.
There are a number of expensive cards now.
Yeah, a lot of the cards went up. I'm not sure if people are competitive enough, but that's like something I'd keep in mind, I guess, because Summer Pockets has been falling off a bit, and I think what I'd expect is that Konosuba is gonna be high rep. SAO is gonna be semi high rep. It's not gonna be as high as it is now because a lot of that comes from English. And wait, what sets are still coming out until December?
We have a schedule.
It's on the slideshow.
We have the very last slide. We have a schedule with future sets.
Golden Wind.
JoJo isn't legal. JoJo's isn't legal, so
we can probably pick up on those predictions.
Psychono.
Yeah. So Bang Dream is probably gonna stay popular, and Psychono might see a spike. I don't think enough people play Starlight for that to be like have a huge impact. And
we can save that for the meta forecast.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but that's short... like in general, I think people play a lot more aggressively. I think Standby is somewhat uncommon. Like generally, people don't like to play. Well, nobody likes to play 2K1s, but like Standby and 2K1 is, I think, a lot less common than in the East. And
no one plays 2K1, man. No one plays 2K1.
Yeah.
Has one been printed recently?
I think Riki. Well,
no, there haven't been any actual 2K1s printed in a long while. I think there's only been the double 2K1 souls.
They also printed like the in Fujimi the salvage one, the assign 2 soul and salvage a card, which is kind of close. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, where did I want to go?
Okay, so like
cards like Riki and Clean Cut that enable aggressive strategies are really popular. And decks that can, I'm not sure if there's like a real correlation here, because Summer Pockets doesn't have either of them. Summer Pockets just has this big level 2 board, and I think that might also be like
something. It has a Riki.
Not okay. So there's a difference between like salvage, like on death Riki type effects and on play Riki type effects, and like how impactful they really are. But I think generally aggressive strategies are pretty popular, and then like I guess people care more about finishers than they do in.
I mean, for the record, I do think on reverse Rikis are pretty aggressive. You can just turn 1 them, and then that still leads to a tri-field. But no, I get your point. So it's more aggressive in Europe, is what you're saying?
Yeah. I guess like Riki's still enable a tri-field like on reverse on death, but
We'll see.
You need to draw the zeros, whereas if you have like an on-play effect, you can just like search another 0.
Well, the other thing about on reverse Rikis is you can, like, going second, you can dual field extremely comfortably. So
Yeah, that's true.
I do think that in terms of aggression, that it is pretty comparable. Yeah. No, so that's good. That's good.
Real
Before
quick,
we get to the ban list, are we done with Europe?
Well, I just want to get one more thing from Chris. Real quick. So how would you say the last ban list affected Europe's meta?
Hinologi had like, well, it was interesting because in the last chance qualifier, there was a high Hinologi rep, but I
when
think
was the
one
last
of them
chance
made
qualifier?
last in December.
So before the ban list, before the last ban
yeah,
list
before the ban list. But like in the actual finals, Hinologi had, I think, 0 representatives out of like 45 people or something.
And that was after the ban list?
No, that was like last chance qualifiers the day before.
I'm talking about the finals, though. I'm talking about the finals.
Oh, the finals, it had 0 rep.
But
was it
after
or before the ban list?
After or before the ban list?
No, it was before the ban list. It was
everything
like
was before the ban list.
Yeah, everything was in December.
Okay.
And what was the other hit? Bang Dream and I think Sunshine. Sunshine actually got second place, I think. So Sunshine being hit definitely impacted something. I think Sunshine had like multiple players. I think it was one of the more high rep sets. Yeah. Okay. I think there were like 5 people or something like that playing Sunshine.
What about like
what was your Bang Dream? Bang Dream also had rep, and Bang Dream always had rep. Okay. So Bang Dream hit was definitely impactful too.
As in the rep decreased noticeably after the ban list?
No, but it like forced people to build the decks differently because a lot of the decks were playing a combination of stock swap and the refresher.
That seems
the refresh counter not so much.
I see. That seems about in line.
That's kind of interesting though. Is there a reason why there wasn't much Hinologi? Is it just general sentiment that it's not a good deck, or were people just over prepared for it, or why?
I think it's half-half. I think the people that thought it wasn't, like, a lot of people thought it wasn't a good deck, and like the other people just over prepared or like ran multiple anti-change bombs.
I think that if you're running in if you're in a format where like people are double early playing in every second match you play against like Sunshine or ReZero deck that double early plays, that's probably not a great meta for Hinologi, is it?
Sunshine is probably fine, but ReZero is horrible for you.
I'm saying if you're I mean that if people are preparing for decks like that and they cram like anti-changes or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. Like a lot of Bang Dream decks were running for anti-change bomb.
Well,
which is something like that's not as common in Japan anymore, but like a lot of Bang Dream decks just jam for anti-change bomb here.
Not all hard decks in Japan play 4 copies of that anti-change bomb without the anti-change text. So yeah.
Well, it's mostly not because of the anti-change, right? But like because of the stock, because the stock effect is rated highly, and because it has like more utility.
It's good even if it's not an anti-change.
Exactly.
So that's the retrospective. But before we talk about the now and the August 2019 ban list, people are going to ask. We've got multiple people from North America on this cast. Why is NA getting shafted? Why aren't we talking about the NA meta?
It is because there has not been a competitive circuit involving Japanese White Shores play since the new ban list. That season is actually there is no season for this part of the year for North America. That's about it. There's not much to say other than like what happens locally, I guess, but that's subject to like a lot of variance.
And also NA is very big and has a lot of different locals that don't interconnect at all.
Yes.
And there's no incentive to prepare to metagame because there's no competitive circuit. And hopefully that changes in the future, but for now we got nothing to talk about.
And Railgun's
Alfred,
too good anyway.
Do you want to talk about Australian meta?
I don't even I haven't played in a big tournament since like the last EN tournament. The problem is we don't have WGP because of sales reasons. So
thanks.
the meta is all based on so the biggest tournament of the year is all in Sydney. It's the Macquarie Salt Fest, where
one
it's
coming
usually
out
like
at the end
40,
of the
50
month.
people. Yeah, 40, 50
Usually
people.
50, 60 recently, I think.
Oh, good,
Highest
good.
has been 64. It's pretty.
Yeah, and this one guy keeps winning with Puyo. So he's just a god.
Yeah, he's won more than half of the total tournaments that have been run.
Yes.
I think
Which
isn't Puyo just also a very good deck in that meta? Since it's like similar to Japan, like they like a lot of the same decks and strategies, and Puyo is
I
just
don't know.
really
I
good
don't know if
against
it's
field-based strategies.
it's definitely a field-based meta down here because people really like sets like Standby SAO, Hinologi, ReZero, lots of sets that are very field-based.
Symphogear is going to be popular soon.
Yeah, Symphogear is also popular. But I also think there is a good mix of people who don't necessarily subscribe to the Japanese paradigm.
I heard Canberra is somewhat like that.
Yeah, Canberra's interesting. There are a few Canberra players who play very offbeat decks that have a lot of effectiveness against a specific meta. As to whether they do well, it's kind of hard because it's a 60-man tournament, not the easiest thing to top in when the round count isn't super high. So I don't know. It's really hard for me to say anything about Australia because one, I haven't been involved in the competitive scene in a little while, and two, it's really just player based, if I may say that. Like you see the same 10, 15 names in the top X number of places because they're just good players. And that's I don't think that's likely to change anytime soon.
No, it won't.
All right,
If
let's talk
anyone
about
from
what
Bushroads
changed.
listening, can we have a WGP, please?
Please
Thanks.
give us WGP. I really want WGP back. That would give me a reason to play again. Play
Same.
more anyway. I'm the Swordfest is nice and all, but I don't really want to fly up just for that, unfortunately.
60-person tournament. It's pretty big.
Yeah, but the prizes are like a piece of paper and a booster box, and
Pretty much.
yeah,
It's a very pretty piece of paper, though.
it is. But
You
there's
also get to
there's
choose who the next winner gets. You can slap
Yes.
any card image on the next one. So if you win with Konosuba, you can chuck a cabbage on the next guy's certificate.
Hasn't Leaf Counter been on every single round of certificates?
There's a special Leaf Counter award for the absolute madman or something.
And there's like a most improved one as well, but that one seems to vary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Australia in a nutshell. I can't comment too much since I'm not super involved or anything.
Memes and dreams.
Oh, look, I think it's a lot more serious than we make ourselves out to be.
Okay.
Because people do play serious decks here. It's just
Yeah.
everyone has
yeah.
different views, and that's a good thing, I think. All right, so let's move on to the alluded here and now. A big reason why we've convened at this time in these places. There's been a ban list, a ban list change. The August ban list 2019 has made one big shift that affects primarily Japan and I guess to a lesser extent SEA. And I guess there are a couple people like scattered throughout playing Hinologi. Spoiler, Hinologi got hit. And then they also unbanned a card that no one gives a damn about, I'm pretty sure.
It was
Like,
from
we've
one copy
got
to
one-
two copies, so it wasn't really an
so we've got
unban.
look, I think that one copy of the card is so worthless that no one played it. Two copies, you can start thinking about it. So it practically is an unban in my books.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so let's not beat around the bush. The card changes, the ban list. Hinologi had its pick one of two changed. It's no longer a pick one of two, it's just a ban. They've banned the 1-1 principle. No,
1-0.
is it 1-1? It's whatever.
It's 1-0, dude.
Yeah, whatever.
Get it right.
It doesn't matter, man. They banned the alarm that allows you to draw like 6 cards and have a field full of 13Ks.
You know, I've played that card
And,
on the field once.
Yeah, look, I'm sure you did. I've also done similar things with bad alarm cards too. But that's definitely not the purpose of the card. The purpose of the card is to fundamentally break the resource management of the game. In terms of design, I actually think it's as egregious as cards like Project Diva's Umiyuri, that sort of thing.
Would you compare this to like
Because
Marika?
look, Marika's not even that broken anymore. To
I'm
be
talking
honest.
about I'm
She's
talking about
not
back. Talk about back when they
relative.
restricted it. Yes,
The
relative.
thing is, relative Marika wasn't even egregiously powerful. It could be matched by enough cards. The problem was it was a single card that did it. And to be honest, the broken card in Nisekoi wasn't even Marika, it was Kosaki, because at that point there was nothing comparable. And that's actually very similar to what's happening here. When because Nisekoi could generate field advantage and draw a card with Kosaki, and Hinalogi is doing exactly the same thing, but on a warped scale. So instead of drawing one card, they draw like 5 cards for the price of clocking yourself once, which is not reasonable. I think last cast that we had everyone on, Ken Zabuton specifically mentioned that he thought this was an unhealthy card for the meta because of what it did to everyone's deck building strategies. And a lot of us here disagreed because meta games have to change and warp, and warping to deal with decks like this is something that can be healthy. But at this point, Japan specifically has a problem with Hinalogi, and when there's a problem, we need to fix the problem. It's not something we can just wave our hands away, because Japan is actually suffering because of a deck that has this high conversion rate that no one likes to play. As Honeythief said, no one wants to play this deck, and I have a funny feeling it's because it's not a fun deck to play or play against. So
I object to that part. I actually really like playing the deck when I borrow it from my friends, but it's definitely not
Yeah,
fun
look.
to play against.
Yeah, look, I'm sure that you enjoy drawing 5 cards in one turn and
I think
ending
a lot
with
of people enjoyed it because you have a lot of motions that you do. You have a lot of effects that trigger. I think the deck is probably
Yeah.
fun to play. It's unfun to play against, and people don't want to prepare against it if it's like low, not that high rep.
I mean, the other issue
And-
with this card, right, is that you know, the one question that could come up is why not just ban Nina? But the problem is, if people are going to continue playing
Well-
Hinalogi, you can't just ban. Like, you'd eventually just keep banning all of the transfers, right? Until
Yes, like,
the
this
problem
solves the
problem's gone.
problem.
Yeah, the banning. I
permanently.
just want to clarify that Berlin banning this card is just the easiest way to just stop having to re-examine the deck over and over and over again.
So you're saying Bush
I'm,
Road's
I'm
Yeah,
actually
pretty much. Yes.
Say
I'm
again,
actually
Alex?
impressed with
Say again, Mr. Pattywagon?
so Bushy Road's lazy, Tom. They don't want to do the hard work
Yeah.
of figuring out how to balance
Well, I don't
No,
think
no,
they're
no, no,
lazy.
no.
They literally spent an
absol-
entire season, right? They didn't. They gave it another season before they actually like went ahead and banned this card. So I don't know. I'm not saying they're lazy. It's just it's a matter of practicality at this point.
Look, I absolutely agree. If you look at other card games and their banning principles, this is a very good ban. This is cutting to the heart of the problem in a relatively timely fashion and just nipping it off at the bud. Magic, for example, is notoriously bad at banning specific cards that are a problem. That's very obvious with cards like Mishra's Factory or Mishra's Workshop, whatever that one.
Well, it's like Yu-Gi-Oh has
Didn't
a
they
good
recently hit
example where they
Faithless Looting?
refused to ban the engine and instead just
They
banned
did
all
hit
the combo
Faithless Looting
pieces. And at one
recently.
point,
Faithless Looting.
Well, Hogak is the obvious example, but this is a Weiss cast. Let's not talk too much about it. This is actually a good ban because it just cuts straight to the problem. Get rid of the problem, no more abuse, and Japan is safe again from the scourge of Hinalogi. Now, this is all based on Japan's metrics. If you were to take, for example, Europe into account, Hinalogi is not a problem there. It's probably not a problem in Singapore. I sincerely doubt it's a problem anywhere else. So you could argue that it's very inbred. That is certainly an argument. But
It was
the fact
kind
of
of
the
a
matter
problem in
is,
Sydney.
oh well, sure, maybe it was a problem in Sydney as well because that one guy who keeps winning also owned Hinalogi and also won with Hinalogi. So yeah, sure, maybe. But the thing is, it's a ban to solve a problem Japan has. and I can respect that. Like even if the card's not necessarily broken, it is broken in that specific circumstance. It's not a card that really should exist.
I think in general, Japan might have self-corrected and just run more things to beat Hinalogi. If it did so well this season, then probably more people play it and then more people counter it. I think that was an option, but they generally, I think, don't like doing that. They like to take like a more hands-on approach, especially because Hinalogi was already dominant last season.
I don't know if extra time would have helped, because it's been over a year. Like at this point, these tournaments have like hundreds and hundreds of people in there. After there's been like 7 or 8 tournaments for singles and for trios this season. Like I don't think more time would have solved the problem.
Well, but it was more along the lines, there was a banning, right? And usage dropped off after the banning, like it actually dropped off. And then people didn't prepare for the deck, and then people actually played the deck for a tournament while they weren't prepared for it. Whereas for the future tournaments, it would have been a known entity. And people might be more willing to prepare for it.
What do you propose as an effective answer to Kino Logic when it early plays three level 3s at level 2, either as triple Nina or double Nina plus 1 support leader?
Generally, things like bounce or things that can remove the cards are really effective against like multi-early play strategies.
The problem I see with that is that most bounce cards cost 2, whereas Kino Logic only cost 1 to play out each of its early plays, so you have to commit more resource in the answer than you did in the threat.
Or you have
I think
to play
that was
a
kind
deck,
of a problem.
Like, or you have to play a deck that's not particularly, well suited to the meta otherwise. Like, imagine playing Talavru into a field full of just standby that walls your level 1 combo.
Wait, why is that bad? Like, Talavru actually destroys standby decks.
No, Talavru is fine, but there's only a handful of decks that can answer this not so largely represented set with an answer which is equally or less costed than the threat itself.
Yeah,
that's true, but like once the threat is answered, the resource cost is irrelevant because Hinalogi stops at the early play point. It doesn't progress any further from there. It doesn't have anything to go into. Like once you answer the Ninas, they just lose.
Logic doesn't make anything stronger than its trans turn, but once you get rid of the level 3s, especially with Nina, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely answered. Like you can hard play the card and it functions completely the same aside from the 2 cards of extra compression. And I think that's kind of a problem because if you're only bouncing, most bounce cards as far as I'm concerned have less power than what Hino Logic has on offense. So there's a limit to how much you can do. Mind you, Hino Logic has also spent a lot less resource committing cards, so they probably will outgrind you if you try to play that game.
Well,
the only
when they play it from hard, you play a 3/2 that doesn't really do anything else on play.
It's minus soul removes threats with the memory kick, and it's just generally big. So I think that's still pretty good when
I don't
across multiple
think
turns.
That's definitely not what I would call an argument. The argument is that it was too efficient, too early, and not enough decks could reasonably answer it without warping themselves again, and that would make them less effective.
It's interesting.
If it was just
they tried printing answers.
Yeah, they did.
Well, but they tried printing like bad answers,
like Review Starlight, and I think Yuna also had one.
Yeah, Yuna also had
time.
Well, we know what those decks are right now, so.
Also, not even just that, they also printed stuff that sends to memory and then comes and sends.
Oh yes, of course.
In Sneaker Bunko and in.
Yeah, the flickers.
SAO, not sure.
Yeah, but that's not even that good. It's not even that good against Nina. That's only good against
Nina. No, that's what I was saying. They were printing answers, but they weren't like printing like good answers.
I think the only answer that I can get behind right now is the one in Darling in the Franks, but that's really it.
Well, I mean, Wormhole in Talavru is also extremely potent against.
What about Lucia and Rewrite?
Overlord also had that. What's rewrite meant to
Uh,
be doing again?
Like
Rewrite's
just
just
speed
playing
over.
13Ks. 13Ks that you can't counter against.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
sure. So
Did-
the Nina dies, and then you bring the Nina back, and then you run over those things, and they get
Well,
sent to
they can
memory.
just
So
counter.
eventually, you're still gonna.
You
Right.
can
like they're not going to
theoretically
run
counter.
over Lucia if Lucia doesn't want to die. That's just not going to happen.
Well, they
I-
probably
the
run
thing
over
is-
one and crash into another lane if they front.
Well, Japan does not run that build of rewrite anyway, so I don't think
Yeah.
that's
I
the
mean,
point.
Well,
Yeah,
but
that's
they
also
can't-
relevant.
they could
Can't
move
Nina
towards
just
that, right?
side for 2?
Yeah, but then
They
you
have a
front
climax.
over her again,
But then
right?
you
What I'm
front
saying
back
is
and
that they're
then
not losing damage.
If they
Yeah,
side
but
with combo, they
rewrite's
hit
not-
like 16.5.
If rewrite has gloves counter, they hit back. They go to like 18 or 19k very easily. But that's neither here nor there. Again, that's a very specific deck with very specific build.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that there are definitely like ways to like make Hinalogi less effective that people have available to them that they just chose not to play.
Well, they don't like a lot of the answers. They'd rather just play big standby decks they're more comfortable behind.
Yeah.
And
The
look,
big
I can
standby decks
understand that.
are bad against Nina, generally. Unless they're like really big. Like 8 standby Fantasia is probably too big for Nina to do something or do enough.
They get big
No.
enough.
Yeah.
Either way,
Nina get big
they beat the shit out of Hinalogi, and I think that was correct. Because again, Principle is just a card that didn't need to exist. And in that same vein, I really hope Umayuri gets hit very soon, because that card does not deserve to exist at all.
I heard that card does really well in standard.
You know what? It probably does.
Music's OP, guys.
Look, you can really easily double Shining Dragon in standard, so let's leave that alone.
Let's ignore that.
Moving
There
on.
was one other change.
We're talking about
Cordelia's
Cordelia's Garden.
Yeah, got
I
unrestricted to 2 copies.
Live reaction. Oh my goodness. It's gonna do
There's just
probably
nothing.
nothing. Probably nothing.
Yeah, probably nothing.
Can Milky
probably
play a
unrestricted.
grindy game?
So what it does open up a possible deck permutation where Milky can play a more grindy game, as Zabuton said. But
if it was
outlook is not
counter?
very. It's not a counter. It's just you just be healing a lot basically. You're just
It's
maxing
not
out
a
on all your
counter,
healers.
yeah.
You play early play healers. You play this event. That's basically it.
Because one of the Fate lists at top in Japan played 2 copies of that 3/3 heal.
Okay,
3
but that
so I
event
guess-
heals
but they
3.
also play-
Healing 3 is
Yeah,
I think way better.
No, that's very fair.
They also played that
Uh,
Rider, right? That was also a Rider deck.
Yeah, there's like damage
Yeah,
mitigation
so-
there.
No.
They
It
did
wasn't
not.
the Rider deck.
Oh, okay.
There were
play, like,
two,
heals,
there were two
vanilla
talking
healers.
decks.
Is it Rider Healer though?
No, it was Illya healer. They played Illya
They played-
healer.
Yeah,
and
it
like
was, the,
the
it was definitely
the
Illya
science
healer.
power on
I remember
startup.
the rest.
Okay.
The it was like vanilla door, I think bar combo, and it had
Yep.
like the Rin, the science power on startup, and
3 of those.
Illya healer and the 3/3 event.
Was
I
this
think
a
they
maybe
use
Shiro
a
deck?
Sakura EP.
Did this deck play
Oh
the
yeah, and
Shiro?
Sakura EP. Yeah, Sakura EP.
Nope.
Anyways, the difficulty with Garden is that Milky is very slot heavy in terms of you don't really have a lot of slots that you can play around with unless
No,
you
it will-
decrease the
it will be
consistency
fine.
of your deck.
It would be
you
fine
can
if it was
fit
a
this
character.
in. I mean, the
It would
problem
be
is,
fine if it was a character.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, just the thing about slots is that you have to warp the deck. Basically, you have to change the deck strategy to play this card. It's not a card you can just put in and expect to do anything.
Mm.
Mainly because it's an event that needs to be drawn.
The thing that changes is just the top end, right? The rest of the shell stays the same.
No,
Okay.
No,
You also need to make.
I would assume so. Like, if I were going to, I have drafted a list for Cordelia's Garden with 2 of them. I think the deck would probably be better suited going to a standby shell
Yes.
with like this style, like with this kind of game plan. I think winning board, playing heals, starting at level 2 with the EP healer, naturally complements this kind of card where you're trying to stall out your opponent rather than take advantage of a finisher to end them in one turn.
I think literally the major problem with this is that you can't get it easily.
It's
And
very
that-
hard to
Yes.
get. Yeah, it is.
That's
Fairly-
literally the only problem. If it was like a 3/2 character with whatever power, come in, play heal, and then start up, sack this, heal again, or like send it to memory or whatever, you'd play it in a heartbeat. You would have played it at 1, you'll play it at 2.
Yes,
But
Yes.
that is true.
you can't
but-
get it. You can't get it easily. That's the problem.
So, for example, if it were completely unrestricted and at 4 copies, would you then warp your deck completely to be able to play it? If it were a lot easier to get.
It would
Of
be
course.
it would be more worth
4
exploring.
copies.
So, I would.
It would be more
I
worth
would. It
exploring.
would be more. I would be more inclined to say better things about it. Yes. So, I would be more
Well,
confident about it as like a deck concept. As it is right
Because-
now, I'm already considering warping the deck to fit 2 copies because I think the card is that strong. It's something that all Milky players should probably consider. If it were up to 4, that just amplifies that evaluation like positively, I think.
Is it stronger than the game plan of like sitting on witches, burning them to maybe 3/2 or whatever, and then restand, punch them?
I don't think
Is
it's
that-
stronger.
Well, it's just a completely
That might
different
be
deck.
meta dependent.
It's just a
It's a
completely
different
different deck.
deck.
Yeah.
You play it in
It's
a
a
different
different deck.
environment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the
The
thing
thing
is, that's what it's competing against, right?
Yeah, no, like the biggest issue is if you warp your deck around this Cordelia's Garden game plan, and you don't draw Cordelia's Garden, like you're just playing a worse version
No.
of your deck.
Well, you can still play like a bunch of heals, which is
Yeah.
fine.
Well, the deck already plays a bunch of heals, but
Right.
it also tries to finish the opponent and tries to pressure the opponent a lot more.
Well, it plays
Yeah,
significantly
but if
less
you just
heals.
if you play a bunch of AP heals, then like you can still do a semblance of that game plan and maybe draw into Cordelia's Garden at some point. I don't think it's a
Yeah, but
strong game plan.
the thing is-
I'm just
The thing is that if you have more copies of Cordelia's Garden available, that becomes a lot more consistent and a
Well,
lot more coherent as a game plan.
So the issue,
Because then you can also draw 2 copies of Cordelia's Garden.
the issue with the adding Cordelia's Garden is just like a random upside of playing the main build, which is like bar door. Is that there's just not enough slots. Milky has to
Yes.
run too many level 3s. There's just not enough slots.
Too
It's
many
like
level
This is a pretty cop out answer, but there's just like too many important cards that need to be run that are
For the
more
deck to
important.
run properly.
That are more
Like, for the
important-
deck to be
yeah. These
consistent,
are like core
need to
game
run
plan
more
cards.
cards.
Yeah. These are core game plan cards that need to be run. That simply shouldn't be shunted out in favor of like a incidental ceiling raiser. That isn't even like that much of a ceiling raiser.
for the record,
certain
I
situations.
think that even if you had 4 Cordelia's Garden, the full heal game plan I don't think is the way to go. Like, let's say Index, right? Irrelevant deck, but it has healing magic, which is better than Cordelia's Garden by a lot. Like, I think it is actually so much better that I'm not even sure this comparison is apt.
Sure.
And that deck also has a refresher, and it has a lot of deck control, and its full game plan. Like, I play Index with no
But
level,
its game
like
plan
no
is not as
comeback
good as
timer.
Milky's.
Yeah, sure. But the point is top end. Even with all of that, an Index can compress, somewhat well.
No, like the difference. The
And it's
difference.
just one of
the
the
main
resources.
difference is
Like this is a difference
uh,
between like playing 1 to 2 healing magic versus like 3 to 4 Cordelia's
Index.
Guardian, right?
Index doesn't win board. Milky wins board. That's like the big difference, and that's what completely
No,
changes
look,
how impactful
I mean,
a card like this can be.
30 minutes ago, we were talking about how we don't judge a deck just by its top end, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you can't say that, the card in Index is better, but, you won't use it in...
No. I'm leading
in
in
Milky
to say
Holmes.
that. I'm leading in to say that even with a card this much better, and even if Milky had, say, a Vento type refresher, I'm not entirely sure that's actually what the deck would want to do anyway.
It would be an interesting
I don't
exploration
think-
of the deck's capabilities.
I am very much for a proactive game plan because
I mean-
reactivity is just. I don't think that's
Isn't-
a
like-
very good strategy, honestly.
I think at
This
some
is
point
the,
though,
you can't blanket say that, and I think a deck that explores this concept, what a Cordelia's Garden deck
I mean, healing.
Milky Cordelia's Garden deck looks like is like the new Alputa deck.
I mean, healing in chunks, right, is completely different from like healing on top of like level 3s, right? When you start healing in bunches of 2, 3, or 4, right, it becomes a completely different kind of utility, and it did a completely different like kind of finisher, you could say, because it's just like a huge tempo swing, and that's what finishers are for, right? We create tempo with finishers to create extra damage, but you know, healing in chunks of 2, 3, 4 can also create a similar kind of tempo at a part of the game when people are trying to kill each other, right?
Well, the problem is if you're at 3-0, then healing does very little, and proactivity.
But
is
if you're at 3-0, Milky is still like strong at 3-0, right? The
I'm
entire
not-
game
I'm not-
plan is set up to, you know, survive one-turn kills. at 3-0.
I'm just talking about the strategy. I'm just transplanting these index cards into Milky Homes, and I still don't think that it's necessarily as good as a proactive gameplay.
You don't think healing do nothing decks are good?
I think as someone who has played so many, my very first deck was a healing do nothing deck, and I love those decks, but I don't think they're good. I just don't.
Even if you win board the whole game and you have strong level 1 presence and level 2 presence and you attrition your opponent out of cards, you're playing solid fundamental Weiss. If your top end is just healing do nothing, it's not good Weiss.
I think you should be pushing for damage if you have that much command of the game, and you should be winning with cushioning. That's what you should be doing. I don't see why you would give your opponent a chance to stabilize. I don't see why you would back off and just go 2-2-2 when they're at 3-3 or whatever.
By stabilizing,
why would you give them a
3 on their brainstorm, right?
It's possible that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
elaborate.
Why not? Why isn't that? Why is that something we should allow? Why not just kill them, right?
I
The
think
thing
this,
is, you can die even from 3-0.
This
Yeah. So why
distinction-
be reactive? Why
this
be reactive, and why not just
distinction
be?
between,
But this is like a
Western-
mindset difference.
I think it's also a bit hard to input in unless you're giving a specific deck example.
I'm just saying
Yes.
Milky with
Well-
like a bunch of healing top end. I would rather play a version with Witch and Ellie restand.
You are still
and-
playing Witch in the Cordelia's Garden.
Yeah, sure.
Which will
sure,
definitely
whatever.
still be in the deck, I just
In fact, my
Yeah.
list
Yeah,
is playing
yeah.
standby, so you're starting to standby out witches at level 2. Like, that's just my input.
Maybe not restand Ellie, but the Witch seems like a pretty good addition.
Yeah, she's a heal.
Restand
you play
Ellie
that
is
no
quite
matter
a good
what.
card, though.
I know I made this
You
comparison.
cut it from your list. You cut it from your list, Tom. Like restand Ellie
I mean,
just
I
doesn't
can't.
fit that.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't.
I
play
made
it
that
in the
comparison
card.
with Tom, that the Cordelia's Garden is a pay 2, ditch 1, heal 2, whereas restand is a, pay 1, ditch 2, deal 2.
Yes.
Is that how the card
Yes.
economy
Yeah.
works out?
Yeah.
And the West thinks pay 1, ditch 2, deal 2 just is a better fundamental Weiss than pay 2, ditch 1, heal 2.
Yes.
Really? Oh, I think heal is stronger.
Right. Well, I
Well,
think as we get into the
mindset difference.
contentious evaluations in our tier list, that this distinction is going to come up a couple times. So maybe we can wrap up.
Yeah. Now we can
Yeah,
segue
let's-
into sets, and maybe we can start with Bunny Girl.
A moment of
Because
silence
I think-
first for this card.
For what?
You can see it in the slide.
Oh.
I'm a
I
doctor
can't
in
see the
white
slides.
shorts.
Sorry, I just had to do that.
Okay. Did I just get doxxed?
Anyways,
Maybe.
So, well, what do we want to talk about first?
Are we
What-
talking about
What deck
Albedo?
do we want to talk about? Oh yeah, Albuta. Sure.
okay.
All right. So
Yes.
this is
Since I
Japan's,
think-
Japan's
This is
favorite
perfect.
of them all.
This is perfect. This deck is an example of the heal concept, right?
Yes, that's why I was saying let's talk about this.
Yeah. I guess this is a heal a lot of deck.
I think of this as like ugly duckling Cinderella story. And I know that on previews and for months after this release, nobody thought that this set was any good. So what happened?
Well, fundamentally, it's just good against Japan's favorite decks, right? That's like the big thing.
Does
Yes.
someone remember the release date of this set?
May
Hey?
something.
Yeah.
I think most people discounted it as bad.
It was next to Heaven's Feel.
Okay, because I
Oh.
think the first top with that deck was actually quite early, but
But I think
Yeah.
it
was
wasn't
early,
that
but it
type
was a
of
different
build,
build.
right?
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
different build.
Like
Um,
the
Set's
type
always
of build that people play right now is very different.
Yeah, and the playstyle is very
Um,
different
How
too.
about somebody
Because
talk about what the
I
deck does?
actually remember that like when Bunny Girl came out, people were playing a lot of 8 door with the 1-0 memory. What's it called? Time Machine.
Yeah, time machines.
Yes, and now the decks are. I think Japan only plays standby door, with the door combo being split on whether it's Nodoka or Mai.
half of the time it's just an empty
that's
door.
changing.
No, I think they play the Nodoka regardless.
I think most of it is the
There's a few builds
Nodoka
that
now.
just drop the
because-
Nodoka entirely, but I think
Okay.
Nodoka is a
Yeah,
bit
I
more
think-
common.
You have a split between Nodoka, MT, and Mai, but it's more generally towards Nodoka and MT.
And whenever they
Okay.
get rid of the Nodoka, they play the Tomoe because they still need to
Yeah,
bounce
the
the opposing
bounce.
Futaba. So
But
like,
Yeah.
Tomoe and Let's
Um,
See range 3.
yep.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed with the deck is that like both door combos aren't good in the deck. They're just there because you already want the empty door.
You just want to play
So
standby
that's
door.
that's
You
not
don't
that
commit
expensive.
to it,
Yeah.
but
What
it's
is
good
this
enough.
deck plan? Like,
Okay.
how does this exemplify Japan and the
So
East?
one thing
Uh,
I noticed about the deck is that because you had a lot of clean cuts, the fact that it just plays a mill runner is a big slap in the face to all of the decks that are trying to try field and have fun with the clean cut already.
Is there a reason why this is
that's
like a unique
so
advantage
level
for?
1. What the hell, man?
Is this like an?
Lots of other decks
It's actually
has
level
clean,
0.
runners.
Why
well,
is
it's
playing
something.
a
It's
runner?
something you noticed. Well,
Why is playing
regarding
a runner a meta call? My god.
No, but-
Japan, I guess it is.
Well, because
okay, I'll actually
for a
talk about the
while-
deck concept so that
Go
we have a
ahead.
proper segue. Why is this deck relevant for this healing thing? It's a standby, or like Japan plays it as a standby variant. You try to win board, and then you play a lot of early play heals. You play like 5-6 early play heals, and you standby out a 3-2 assist that tries to help you win board. And that 3-2 assist has the ability pay 5 stock. If both players are level 3 or higher, both players heal 4. So what the deck generally tries to do is like grind out the opponent, win board, win resources, and then like if you fall behind because you play standby, you can reset the clock and then like beat the opponent from like a resetted clock from when both are 3-0. And the thing that helps you do that is playing a bodyguard that wins board that's really big. And then when your opponent has to crash into it, the bodyguard burns. So after you've reset the clock, you've put them again at like 3-2, 3-3 after you've burned them a couple times because they had to run in, and then you can try going for the kill. So it's like a very wait and see and like try to stabilize. type
So
of deck.
is that good? Is this good?
I
I
haven't
don't
played it
think
very
it
much,
is.
but
Or
so far it felt pretty solid. It
I
does,
think
however,
it's-
randomly die from 3-0, so that's also why I think Bangreen went up again a bit. It does feel strong.
by randomly die from 3-0, do you mean it has a special
in-
tendency more than other decks, or
Mocha
You don't
interacts with
compress
it really
or
funnily.
reduce soul. You don't compress or reduce soul. Well, you don't compress like super hard.
Yeah, you
so
don't have memory. You don't have
if your
tap
opponent
counters.
plays something like Mocha, you can just randomly die. Whereas a lot of other
Mocha
decks
actually
recently
also
have
has the
different
funny
symptoms.
interaction where you can like still cancel the opponent's burns because you put a climax there and then it just burn out the
that's actually
climax.
quite funny.
I
But
see. So compared to something
I don't
like
know.
minus soul or can't side, which is how like they build fate, like this doesn't
Yes.
have onboard damage mitigation. It just has a clock reset.
Yes.
Yes.
But it shuts down most, if not all, on reverse finishers
Yeah, it's
Pretty
hard to
much.
beat over.
because it gets to like 19.5 usually. I think post
It
counter.
also nullifies Shimakaze Kai, because you can just counter the Shimakaze Kai and then counter again on the main
Yeah.
attack.
Is this just a meta moment darling, and it's a product of the
Yes.
previous meta, or what's going to happen
I
now?
think-
Yes,
I
because
think-
it
I
beats
think
a
it'll
lot of the
still be
field
played.
decks. Yeah, it will still be played, but I think the reason why it was so strong and why people regarded it so highly is because it was very good against what's popular right now. But
Was.
It's actually pretty good
Uh,
against Hina Logic because they can't
Yeah.
fight your bodyguard.
that said, since Japan likes playing those decks like 8 standby decks, this might still just be popular because it's good against those type of decks.
I mean, 8 standby Fantastic Man answer it.
What
Yes,
what
because
might be
you can pay 1, discard 2, and double the power of one of your cards and just smack over.
yeah.
But it's good
Oh, yeah,
against
that's
just
true.
slow decks in general, aside from eight standby
Decks with
Fantasia.
Yeah.
bouncers can
Yeah.
also dismantle.
That
these
said,
setup,
that
right?
there's one thing that's important. Like the mirror for this is really feels bad because both people are just gonna bounce the bodyguard.
Yeah.
So that
So on
might
that
deter
topic,
some
right?
people from playing this.
Decks with bouncers are also an answer to this endgame.
Yeah.
setup. Yeah.
Bounce is just good in a field-based metagame, in a grind-based metagame.
But
Which
how
is
many
kind of ironic.
sets have access to bounces?
Enough
Milky
that I
is the big
think
one.
I think it's enough that I
Not
think
enough.
you'd be worried, right? If people are metagaming for Aobuta, I think you should be worried
Yes.
about bouncers.
Yes.
There's
Enough
Nano-
sets
Nano-
have playable
uh,
cards that bounce cards.
what
There's
else?
also it's not just bounce. It's also the Konosuba clock kick.
Oh, that's also true, I guess.
I guess.
On
you
field
also-
removal, basically.
Okay. By the way, I'm just gonna. I don't know. Does anybody have anything important to say about Aobuta? Because I want to talk about like a different version of this deck that I think
no.
is way better.
Okay.
I think we're
Yeah.
mostly on the same page, so we should just go on. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Because you can also like Japan likes to play it as like a standby deck. I think you can also just play it as with the book combo with the Ariri, which is like you bounce 2 characters when she gets fronted on reverse, and just play the deck as a more aggressive deck instead of like trying to win for field. Because what often happens with the standby deck is because you fall behind in damage, the opponent is still at level 2 while you're at level 3. So you can't use the bodyguard to heal down. Oh, not the bodyguard, the assist. So if
I'm
you
not against.
That,
Oh,
that
sorry,
assumes
finish.
that assumes that you're playing in an aggressive metagame.
yes,
That's not
of
going to
course.
happen in Japan.
Well, but we can also
I'm
talk
not
about the
against
West,
the
right?
idea. I'm not against the idea of playing aggressively against Obito, because yeah, if you're at level 2 or your opponent's on level 3, they can't heal down using the Tomoe. But
Yes.
at the same time, I don't think the book combo is very good when everyone's playing standby, because the cards you bounce are less likely to be able to actually fight the board on your next turn.
Yeah, it's just
Generally, the
all
reason.
pluses.
Sen, do you know the 1-0 Sakuta that stocks a vanilla on play?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that card.
You can
it's
bounce
okay.
that and just gain a resource, and then you can just you can then just crash in, and
Yeah,
it
but
honestly
then
doesn't
you're
matter that
not
much because you compress. No, you just need the initial like get hand back from the combo, and then you just sit on brainstorms, and you have like
Yeah, but
extra
then
resources
you-
because of the 1-0.
Then you're not going to have the damage lead.
Yeah,
No,
I think
you play a global soul climax at 1, and then you just spam early play healers every turn.
Yeah, but then they'll have the damage
No,
lead.
no,
Yeah, they'll have the
No, no, no.
directs.
Well,
Because you're crashing stuff in.
they would have compared to
That-
the standby turn. You don't have
compared to
it's
the
same
deck,
damage.
if a deck plays a standby at 1 and you play this deck, you have a damage lead. Trust me. Like I've done this, I've tested this a bunch. You just have the damage lead. That's just not it. Because of the global soul, and because you move through your first deck after that, they just deal less damage, and the damage that they do deal, say even if 2 attacks stick, then you heal down twice with 2 early play healers, and then you've just like you keep dealing more damage and you keep healing down, and because your end game is so doesn't need a lot of resources, right? It needs like if you hit level 3, like if you need to do the heal 4, you need like 8 stock to do like bodyguard and that, which is not that hard to get if you can just like play the Sakuta that keeps making you stock, and you have like 1 cost early play heals with the Kaede early play. Like it's not that hard. And yeah,
Can we talk about summer pockets now?
summer
And
pockets.
the new summer pockets. 'Cause I
Okay.
think that might be an
Yes.
okay transition because their climax spreads are of course very different, and that might imply.
I only know about 8-bar. Can someone tell me about the other builds
Let's-
first?
Okay, so
Yes,
that is not what I meant
Maybe
by the other
maybe
summer
8-bar
pockets,
is
but-
meta now. 8-bar might be meta
No.
now.
8-bar.
It's
which
probably
8-bar?
the
Summer
better-
pockets.
the-
8-bar.
The bigger reason to play summer pockets now, maybe, because
Well,
the thing
big reason
that
is
we
stop.
meant. The thing that we meant with summer pockets or summer pocket style decks, or why it got outclassed, is the 1/0s that draw ditch on play and change with the climax combo into big 2/1s that have an on reverse advantage combo and often give stock back.
So wind plus what's the other card? What's the other card?
Wind plus
Oh.
either standby or bar, both is
Oh wait.
like
Oh, we're talking about summer pockets.
both
Still?
exist.
Yeah.
Damn.
I think generally standby is a lot more common in Europe. Like bar is basically non-existent, but bar was more common in Japan, I think, as the second CX.
I think
The
they like
conversion
stock
for
swap.
summer pockets is really good this season compared to last season. I'll try and find the chart for last the ban list before this one, but that's
Okay.
also an interesting thing to look at.
And they weren't standby in the
I
East.
think the trend from last season's summer pockets to this season is standby fell off and bar top end became super common. I'm not entirely sure
also
what
think-
that changes.
So there's
No,
there's
I also-
one build that you're also missing, which is door bar, which has also been
Summer
topping.
pockets.
Oh.
Summer pockets,
So the
summer
level
pockets,
one,
door
level
bar.
one, level
Yep.
one
Oh,
pirate
okay.
combo plus the
Level
burner,
one,
right? I
no, level one Minami and the burner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So and
comment.
this is actually a build I really like and enjoy, but it plays a lot more aggressively than most things, at least that you have here. But you're basically just playing the Minami and then stock charging with the 1/1 event. Sounds not very good, but it works pretty well against a lot of standby builds, because you're just going for lots of damage, and your finisher is modular, which is not bad.
Well, I guess the diversity of SMP in at least the East undermines the obvious point of comparison that the West would make between the Summer Pockets 2/1 build versus Love Life Sunshine 2/1 build.
I think one thing you can say about why one thing I can think about why Summer Pockets might do well better this season than last season is because Summer Pockets tends to be very good against standby decks because they can't contest the Shiroha easily. Whereas Shiroha, like Summer Pocket, like the 2/1s play like a global. So if they even play that anymore, do they still play the Shiroha?
Japan.
Sometimes, yeah, but not always.
Oh, okay, let's work on the assumption that they do, so that this actually makes sense. If you like Summer Pockets plays a global soul climax, and then standby actually doesn't win field, or wins field very hard. Like they might have to side and then wait on the counter stuff. So they're even slower, and that's like something like field-based decks are always vulnerable to like being beaten at field. And Summer Pockets is one of the decks that can do that, or like decks that summon big 2/1s at level 1 because they try to play the same game that you're playing.
Sorry, I was only half listening, but were you saying that the 2/1 Shiroha beats standby decks in field at level 1?
Yes, because
Yes.
If you have the initiative, I think you absolutely do.
and
if you don't have the initiative,
it's because these decks are geared to field 2 or 3 of this 2/1 at level 1. Like in your combo turn, you're basically going 2 or 3, basically.
Now you go 2. Like 3 is like big sack
the
territory.
Sunshine-
three is almost
Sure.
impossible.
3 is very hard for Summer Pockets. 3 is very almost trivial for the Sunshine version.
Okay,
If we're gonna talk about, this is like a general thing, right? If you just like to paint a picture of, this 2/1 versus standby
yes,
dynamic.
the 2/1 is generally good against standby decks, which is why maybe Sunshine is gonna do well next season or this season in Japan, if they are on that combo, which I'm not sure. I think they actually like 8 standby now.
No,
I
yeah,
wouldn't be
think
surprised if they're on 8 standby.
It's
Yeah.
the
I think I'd be
standby.
seeing like Minami with standby.
That works too, I suppose.
Or Gate standby, yeah. They really like Gate and they really like standby.
I mean, I think that's just not a good deck. Like, why are you bothering? Double early play's not being that special anymore.
Really, Zabuton,
Play
do you still
Guilty
have
Kiss.
any doubts about whether 2-1 wins versus standby? Do you have any thoughts on?
I think it probably does okay against level 1s that got standbyed out, but one of the
The idea is
strengths
that
of the 2-1.
how big
The
is the
idea is
2-1?
that you lose lanes.
How big is the 2-1?
Because
It's about 9k, isn't it?
It's 9-5.
It's 11k.
it's 9-5.
Oh, level 2?
9-5, okay.
9-5.
Anyway, the level 2 2-1 wind combo from the pocket.
Yeah, it'll be 9-5.
Yeah, it's 9-5.
Yeah, so I think it's probably big enough to fight at level 1, but once you get to level 2, you start losing it.
At level 2, they scale to 11k.
Why did they scale to 11k at level 2? Right?
Because
The
you
standby
stand by
owl.
out a global 15.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah.
Sure.
then they're
But level
back.
2.
Also
Standby
like
decks at level 2 also probably kind of hit 11k plus. Or,
yeah.
I think. At level 2
I think the
probably
main
hit
difference is like winning at level 1 is a lot more important than winning at level 2. Because of the how damage scales, right? Because like the deck is a lot worse in level 1, and a lead at level 1 is worth a lot more than a lead at level. Well, a lead at level 1 generally has more value than a lead at level 2 because like your directs are worth less.
You're not wrong, but I also don't think that card is particularly well positioned against standby decks for that reason. Like, yeah, so direct attack at level 1 is a bit better than attack at level 2, but you can still being able to win the field at level 2 is kind of enough, because if both players, as you said, are cancelling or not taking as much damage because of their compressed deck states, you probably just get more time at level 2 to build up, and not having to
Well,
replace
but
your
you
board
don't
is quite
really
powerful.
get the compressed deck state if you like if they like push you early, if they like push you to level 2 or something, and you're not pushing them.
You have to have gotten pretty lucky.
You're not pushing because you're playing standby.
No, you're not pushing. No, you're not. The standby player is not pushing, but I don't think the fact that you played a wind at level 1 necessarily means that they're going to be at level 2 at an uncomfortable position in the game.
No, but the thing is, if you play the wind and they don't hit level 2, then they're gonna lose board for another turn, and that's when you get ahead.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right.
If standby decks ever lose board at like early, it's really bad for them.
They don't have a catch-up mechanism. Basically, they need to rely on canceling.
Not an amazing one.
Yes.
Well, no, I just don't think they have. I don't think they have one that other decks don't also have.
So, and basically, let's quickly go over why Sunshine is than Summer Pockets at this. Sunshine has a very good drop search that adds consistency.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna talk
The
about
2-1 itself is better. The anti-change counter they have is better. The top ends they have is better because it's like Cocoachino top end, and which is generally better than like a restand that is somewhat vulnerable to memory kick or like a stock swap / clock kick. People would agree, right? That Cocoachino is better than that.
I don't think that's even a point of contention. Like, I don't know why
Yes.
we're discussing that at all.
Yeah. So you just scale better at like every level. And also Mari 1-0 is a really good card that you have to support like your game plan.
So great deck. It's gonna top everything. Yes.
So the
I think it
is
still has the issue that it's reliant on drawing the wind, though.
it's a you
Yeah.
mean you mean the level 3
Yeah.
climax?
Yes.
Well,
There's no
all of these
okay.
decks rely
It's-
very heavily
all
on
right.
drawing level.
So the problem, so
Yeah.
the thing about that is, this deck is so much better at drawing climaxes than most of the decks ever created.
Because it has a lot of
You not only
draw drops.
you basically have a ton of draw drops. You have a drop searcher that you can draw first and then you can proc the draw drop search first, then draw drop. You have Mari's to add to your draw drop like range, right?
Yeah, you can scratch.
You have a bunch, and your 1-0 combo like later draw drops. And that's why like this deck really gets triple 2-1 quite often.
Much more easier than
Yeah,
center pocket.
it is way like, and I think that's like part of the reason why a lot of people kind of stopped playing 2-1 Shiroha in Japan, because that deck's game plan is a little more fragile than I think they would like.
Fragile is a nice way
Yes.
to put it. Bloody inconsistent is probably the better way to put it. Whereas Love Live Sunshine has so many more tools. It has, I don't know, do you play that Hanamaru? Do you still play the pseudo Riki thing?
You just
I don't know.
No.
Point is, you have a drop searcher that's really good, like draw drops. You've got all of these other tools that very easily get, like, you always get 2, and you sometimes get 3, which is,
You are kind of favored to get 3.
yeah, whatever. Like, it's just very likely. And that's impressive.
Good deck.
Do you want to talk about rewrite now? That also kind of falls like the field-based territory.
I mean,
So
rewrite's weird because rewrite is field-based at a point where previously it wasn't that beneficial to be field-based then, but now I think that 2-1 Lucia is just an incredible card right now. Like, I don't know why people haven't caught on, why people aren't playing 4 in rewrite. It just demolishes half the metagame.
Well, rewrite has this problem where it'll lose board, right, at level 1 to
Yes.
a certain slice of the meta. That's like the big.
That's fine.
That's like the big pressing issue for that deck right now.
Yeah, that's fine. And the other problem that
Oh.
rewrite has is hand sculpting. Like, it's very
Yeah,
hard
you
for
need to
you
get those 2-1 Lucias.
Yeah,
That's, like,
you
a big
can't
deal.
reasonably expect to have like, because not only is that, you have to manage experience, and basically it means you have to hit your brainstorm early, which is very luck based.
or like Amagi or something. You need something to like.
Well,
get
even
you
with
there.
Amagi, like, think about it. Like, early on, if you Amagi early, you're probably going to get a playable, probably like a clock bond or 1-0 Shizuru. And even with all of this, you also have to be thinking of things to clock for your experience to get Lucia support, and then you also need to get these 2-1 Lucias. It leads to a like a game state where it's very difficult to get more than 2-1 Lucias out on board, and oftentimes you're playing just garbage into the other slots to make the Lucias big. The thing is, even when you do that, if your opponent doesn't immediately like hit you to 3, and you can comfortably sit there, you are very, very likely to have one field for 2 full turns, and your opponent won't have been able to do anything about it, unless they're, exactly Fujimi or like that sort of deck.
There's Japan first of all isn't like playing the Lucia at a high count, so that makes
They're
it
playing, like,
even more
1.
inconsistent.
Well, the thing is, they're playing like
One
1.
to play it.
There's
Yeah, they
there's
play
this
like
there's this interesting dynamic where classic Western builds with 4 Lucia no Kotori combo are a lot more vulnerable to stock swap than the full Kotori combo decks are.
Yeah, but then the full Kotori decks
But the full
cannot
Kotori decks
possibly leverage.
are weak.
They can't leverage
Are
Lucia.
weak against the field-based decks that Japan likes.
Because
So
Kotori is not particularly big on offense, and on defense,
you have
it's barely
you have two options here. Either you concede one of those probably popular things, or take a worse matchup here, or you make a new deck that runs 4 Lucia and 4 Kotori, or 3 Kotori.
I don't think you
sounds
run
like a
any more
problem.
than you do not run more than 2 Kotori in the 4 Lucia deck. You don't
No,
want to field that
I
card.
built this deck.
Just don't have the
It's like
space.
possible. It's possible.
You lose
You-
too much power.
Do you
Like,
cut
the
into the
1K
Shizuru
is-
count or what?
You cut into Shizuru count.
You have to. You can't. There's no other way. You can't do anything else.
And you cut a bit into like all the excess level ones. Like your level 1 is just 4 combo.
I mean, that's already the case with the 4 Lucia
And
deck.
you cut
Kotori.
text like anti-change bomb, stock swap. You cut all of those.
Yeah. Anti-change bomb is out already because Like it's only good against. It was only good against like Yuko Hina Logic anyway. It didn't really do very much otherwise. Because Lucia, when big enough, just eats most things. That's totally like that's you can expect to win with that card. So you cut out all the excess fat. But the thing is, you still don't have great selectivity.
Yes, tech is still somewhat inconsistent.
You rely on Brainstorm and Amagi.
Your
think it's
payoff for
just-
that is having like one of the strongest base power decks, but you're inconsistent.
Well, like
Mm,
your
Whenever
Magi doesn't
that's
even get the
worse-
Kotori.
Yeah, that's what you play
you-
for. You don't need that many Kotori.
Yeah, but you're gonna put one into clock as well. Like, well, maybe you aren't, but I certainly am. Thing is, I think that you just sacrifice something at the metagaming stage. Don't bother making your deck so
Yes.
horribly inconsistent. Like, that's just
Well-
not the right way to go about things. And I think right now, if you want to differentiate yourself from all of the other decks out there, like if you want to play Neg 2 Soul, you play Priestess. I think that's just, that's probably my stance. So just play Lucha and then eat everything except Fujimi. But and that's totally fine.
You might even eat Fujimi, but you take a bigger loss against stock swap decks.
Rewrite has a drop search,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You just put
Yes,
that
it
as
has a
Jimmy,
drop
stock
search.
swaps.
Yes, but they all have different
No,
traits.
no. Oh no. The drop search gets Lucha and Shizuru. You can't get Kotori with it. But
You also can't get your
uh,
brainstorm, which is kind of
So-
important.
You play that as a
Yeah.
floor, I guess.
well, you have Riki if you really desperately
So-
want your brainstorm, but Riki always gets the 1-0 in my experience. The brainstorm is the card you just have to hope to draw, and then just never let go of, and then hopefully you draw a second. So when you play over or ram your
Oh.
brainstorm to make your Lucia field better, you have a backup plan. That's generally how my games with the 4 Lucia build has gone. This is a deck running 2 Kotoris just as EP healers and clock fodder, by the way. And I just based on that sample size, I've never really felt that I wanted Kotori. And if I did want Neg 2 Soul for some reason, I don't think Rewrite's the deck that I want to build for it, because it's just inherently not consistent. So you should just max out the card that's particularly good against your local meta, and I don't think there's a meta where Lucia isn't good right now. You'd be very
That's-
hard pressed to find
I
one.
gave you guys the list, by the way. I posted in the thing. If anybody's
That would
interested.
be like, can you think of a meta where Lucia is just not good? Because I can't.
Is your deck just going to say if you don't draw the stock soul, you don't do anything?
I think that's
Yes.
yes, I think that is the case, and that's a sacrifice you have to make. But I also think that you're favored to draw the stock soul, so that's fine. If I wanted a deck that just always did its thing without having a well, that's not
Yeah,
true.
you wouldn't play
Like,
Rewrite. Rewrite is like a high roll deck. Kind of like a lot of standby decks are, in a sense.
it's a high roll deck, but when it high rolls,
I
it's
don't think
extremely good.
standby's a high
Standby
roll
is not
deck.
high roll.
Eight standby isn't.
8
Standby
standby
decks
isn't.
that-
4 standby is definitely a high roll deck. Inherently,
like,
it is a high roll
if you
deck.
play 4 standby in a standby shell, like if you play 4 standby in Kotoha Million Life, that doesn't matter. That's not really a standby deck.
I
If you,
think
like,
4
play-
standby million life is bad if you're playing it for Kotoha, because Kotoha is not a particularly strong card unless you're getting advantage out of the standby trigger.
No, Kotoha is absurd. Kotoha is super good. I don't know what you're talking
No,
about.
I don't think it's very good.
How is burn 1 3 times not good?
No, burn 1 3 times is good, but you're also putting on a climax that's not really giving you the extra push you want. You're not getting very much power.
Swinging for 2 is better than swinging for 3. And you can
If a
you
3
can just
sticks,
you
you're
can
a lot
just
closer to
he's-
winning
he's-
than a 2 sticking.
He's talking about through the game, not just at that turn.
Yeah, also that.
okay. Well, you don't
Like,
ever
if your
plan
opponent's on
playing
3-3,
standby.
yeah, Kotoha's pretty good, but if your opponent's on
Oh,
3-3, you're
but-
also probably trying to did something to, like,
No, you
dodge
do
your
like double
Kotoha.
Kotoha. You do like double Kotoha against almost every deck, which is a lot of reach.
I don't know.
I guess
reckon
we can
the
talk
the
about
good
Million
decks
Life.
right now have quite.
I guess we're
Yeah, we'll
segueing to Million Life.
Yeah.
No, I do want to talk about one thing very quickly. I do believe that 4 standby decks are inherently high roll, because the amounts of like equity and tempo you sacrifice by having these 4 climaxes that do not, contribute to the normal tempo game, that you'd otherwise try to play, because you're playing 4 other climaxes that have tempo, right? It means that you have to cancel more on average over games. And in order to get the benefit of standby, you basically have to trigger it. And that's not necessarily likely at an opportune time either. So forced standby is, as far as I'm concerned, it's always been inherently pretty high roll. Because there's no situation where forced standby is actually contributing to a good damage race ever. You need to have 8 standby for it to be a super consistent game plan. And even then, your cards need to be very good to make up for the inherent weaknesses of standby.
I think one of wait, give me a sec. Oh yeah, so do you think level 1 climax combos are good?
Yes.
Because if you only
Absolutely.
need to really stand by 1 card during the game, then you only need to have drawn or triggered the standby by that point, which is the sort of
No,
the same
I
for the
think-
level 1 climax combo.
No, I think
Right.
playing the standby is always bad at level 1.
Yeah, I think playing standby at level
But
1
I'm
is
saying
always
playing
bad
the standby at
because-
level 1 is not necessarily the play you're going for, depending on your deck, right?
Yes, but then that's what makes it inherently high roll if you build your deck towards a scenario where you trigger standby at level 1.
So no. You don't. I'm not saying you have to trigger the standby at level 1 for these. Like, what are these decks that you're thinking about? Which play for standby? and
Standby
are high
is standby SAO.
Like standby SAO, basically.
Standby
That's
So
the-
with standby SAO, the strength of that deck is mostly in the Asuna 3/2, and
Exactly.
you can hard play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you only need to draw a standby climax or trigger one, or know that there's like a climax that can play this Asuna out by the time you need it, which is usually level 2. And to be fair, it's more likely that you will do that than draw a copy of a climax if you play 4 copies of in your deck by level 1, so you can use your
Sure.
level 1 combo, right?
But the impact
And then
of a level
it's
1
not like-
combo...
And it's not
Yeah,
like
go
your
on.
deck has any functional issues if you don't draw the standby by level 1. Of course, you'd like to draw it, but you still have ways of getting cards. You can still play aggressively with your level 0 cards. Any
Here's the
climax
thing.
draw is part of the play.
I
Tell
actually
Boggies.
regard... I regard not having a level 1 combo as a functional issue, because that automatically puts you in a bad position compared to anyone who does have a level 1 combo. So that is
I
actually
think
a
not
functional
having a
issue.
level 1 combo just means that you have a lower, a higher floor and a slightly lower ceiling. But
No, I think
on
you
the
have
other
both.
hand, it
I
also
think, I
means
think you
that
have higher floor. I agree with that.
you definitely have a higher floor. Because
I-
it means that you're not relying on drawing your climax to do the strongest possible
Like,
play that you could do at level 1.
Back to
Yeah,
rewrite.
but your strongest possible
If you
play
don't-
is so much weaker than your opponent's strongest possible
Well,
level 1 play.
that's what the floor
That's not
is,
the
right?
floor.
But the
That's not
comparison is your weak play versus
I'm-
your opponent's
That's
weak
fine.
play.
I'm agreeing with you that you have a higher floor, but that's not worth the sacrifice in ceiling. Like, if
There's one
if you go
argument
to-
to be made about why the floor isn't higher, and that's if you play 4 standby and you draw the standby climax compared to 8 global soul deck, you can't push damage at the best moment where you can push damage, which is a floor that a lot of good decks aren't 100% reliant on their combo to keep advantage.
well, no, they
sure.
try and
That's
they try
another
and
thing,
compensate
but-
with that.
When
They do try
other
to compensate with that.
When other decks draw their off climax, they can at least play it as a ditch 1, deal about 2 damage in first deck, which is a very efficient
Yes.
use of a card. And a 4 standby.
So
deck
this
when
is
it draws
based
the
on the
off
notion that you
climax
actually
can do
want to stick damage at, like, in this fashion, right?
Hinaloki doesn't
So
exist
let's-
anymore. I think you absolutely
okay.
want to stick damage.
No.
Because
Again, well,
firstly-
okay, so Hina logic definitely.
Yeah,
Alright,
but
yeah.
there is now. The thing is, once the opponent refreshes, the chance of you getting damage through decreases by a very substantial amount. Like we're
Um,
talking significant double-digit percentage chances of random triggers going through.
It will
and that is
definitely
something that-
decrease.
3
I
soul
agree with
becomes
that.
about as valuable as 2 soul in the
But-
second deck.
Aside from that, even if Hina logic is out of the picture right now, because standby decks are so abundant, it means that if you push your opponent to a level 1 higher, that means that they can reanimate something that's even better than what it would be able to reanimate otherwise.
Yeah, but that's
I
still
think
only
that
one.
if you
that's
want to
still
gain
only one row.
cards,
Well,
No,
Yes,
but
but it
it's
also means
usually
that-
level 3 targets for standbys are more than just a single step powerful than the level 2 targets in your standby decks.
Or they'll affect multiple rows, give 1500
They usually
power.
affect multiple rows, or they usually buff. Most standby decks, as far as I'm concerned, don't play large numbers of copies of level 2 supports, whereas level 3 supports are in almost all of them. And
all
I
the
think
good
this is
standby
Basically
pretty...
all
decks
of
have
them,
them.
yeah. Basically
All the
all
good
of them.
standby decks have them.
Yes, and I think this is
Not
pretty
overlord.
important in that if you play a Global Soul Climax combo, you are forced to do the damage in order to keep your hand running. Whereas if you play something that isn't reliant on a combo or happens to combo on standby, which has been like 3 sets now,
The
you don't
problem
get
with
forced to
your
do that.
reason, look, the problem with your reasoning is you can't win without that happening. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
Let
no,
yourself
so
get
what
to
I'm
level
saying,
3?
what I'm saying is that if your deck is built with Global Souls, your game plan is to push the damage. But if you're not
Absolutely.
playing a Global Souls, but instead playing four Global Souls for standbys, your game plan isn't necessarily catered that way. So the fact that you're not pushing the damage now isn't really the sort of problem you're making it out to be.
Well,
Whereas
it is,
I
because
think-
if the opponent draws 2 Global Soul Climaxes and you fail to respond, you're so far behind that you may as well have just lost the game already.
So but that only if your opponent's drawn 2 Global Soul Climaxes and you've drawn 2 standbys is the only time this is an equivalency, because
No.
if you didn't draw, no, it
This
is
is
right, because
no,
if you didn't draw
we're
the
not.
standby, then
We're
it
not
didn't
trying
matter.
to. We're not trying to make it equivalent. We're just talking about the deck's ability to respond to situations. And
Someone here
standby
can-
inherently.
The thing is, though,
Someone here
that
can
if your
elaborate.
opponent sticks a lot of damage to you, the response isn't necessarily to slam a climax back and do the same amount of damage to them, because that just enables them to use
Well, no,
stronger
you
characters in
just
order
have
to keep pushing the damage, right?
you have no choice. You literally have to sit there and take it. That is your only choice with standby.
No. Yeah, no. But
That's
what
the
I'm saying
limitation.
is that if you're instead playing the Global Soul deck, the correct response isn't necessarily to play a Global Soul back and push the same amount of damage, because now they're on the same level of damage as you, and it's now their turn to play stronger characters to fight what you have on your board, right?
So basically, what you're saying is you have to sit there and cancel a bunch of times.
No, you don't have to cancel, but what you've played out
You
now
do.
is definitely going to be
You
stronger than your opponents.
What happens?
You're going to
if-
have to
you
cancel
absolutely-
somewhere.
What happens
Obviously.
if the tempo
Yeah.
of the game occurs such that the standby deck is now level 3, while the Global Soul deck is still at level 1? Or
If you took 9 damage from level 1 to level 3, that's not standby's
I-
fault necessarily.
well,
Is it? Like,
if you're
Well,
is the
playing,
standby
Global
has
Soul
no
going
way-
to...
2 turns? Across 2
I don't-
turns? That's
Across
just 2
two-
turns.
No, across
I'm
2
saying-
turns. No, across 2 turns, that's plausible. But
That's what
we're
I'm
talking
saying.
about
So-
level 1 right now, right?
No,
And if
but
you're
like,
playing at level
that's the
like-
thing.
so
Say-
like if
say-
you get hit to level 2 early, right? That's
Yes,
that's what we're saying.
yeah. No, okay, yeah. So you
The tempo of the
you
game.
go from like 1-1 to 1-3 or 2-3 or something.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
tempo game has warped to the point where if your opponent cancels once, or hell, if they cancel twice, you are now so far behind that you no longer can leverage that advantage. And you don't have
I
the
don't
ability
believe
to
that's
canceling
necessarily the
madness.
situation.
It's almost
No,
certainly
sorry.
the situation.
See,
Like they
the
just have to
following
get a little
scenario.
lucky.
No,
So
the following
if
scenario.
you took a
we're
bunch
like-
if you took a bunch of damage because you didn't have many climaxes left in your deck, that's a problem that you've created by not managing your deck state. But if you took a lot of damage unexpectedly, then you still have climaxes left in your deck, and therefore you should be canceling, right?
Or triggering them.
Or
Yeah, you could
triggering
just
them,
trigger
yeah.
them.
But that's also
Or
something that you could
are
manage.
you brains?
That's
You shouldn't be brainstorming in these situations.
Yes,
I agree you shouldn't be brainstorming, but if you
So
attack and
that's
trigger
still possible.
twice, or like, look, the point is you can't react to bad luck with that sort of deck. You have to rely
you
on
can't.
luck coming
But
your way.
playing a global soul in response isn't 100% the correct answer either. Because now
well-
you're enabling your opponent to have a wider range of cards to play, and also probably get rid of what's being put on your board, right?
in a
Yeah,
sense.
so the argument with these standbys is that since you're at a higher level, you can play better cards, and you can
Yes.
grind out your opponent's resources from their hand and stock because they have to place shittier cards to keep doing
But-
damage.
The thing here is,
If this happens across
if-
more than one turn, yes, this is going to be a thing. You have a
like-
whole turn to recover.
like,
What happens
let's
if a
say
global
a
soul
following
deck-
scenario.
What
There's
happens
a
if-
global soul deck. It pushes you. Then you play a standby back, so the opponent still stays at level 1. He's gonna lose all
Yes.
3 lanes now because you have an established field, but he's still pushing damage
Yeah.
with the global soul. Assuming you
There's
hit
no
high
deck.
level
So
2.
no, no. So okay. So
Or
this is where. So that means that your opponent has drawn 2 climaxes. They have somehow managed to keep their hand going after both turns. Because if they played the climax the
level
next
one
turn, their
combo.
hand is
Well,
drawn out as
a
well. It
plus
doesn't matter.
a plus
Played
in climax
level one
combo.
combo. Yeah, they just
No, so
played
yeah,
level
so
one
how?
combo.
So what is this plus-in climax combo that doesn't need to win your board, can crash everything, and can still have a hand by the next turn?
Goblin Slayer.
Goblin Slayer.
No,
Zero.
Goblin Slayer isn't a good deck when it comes to pushing damage, right? It's not the best deck.
Can be.
Okay, so
It doesn't
It
have to
can
be the
push
best deck.
every
It's global
okay, so like
souls.
every deck that has like AOT, like decks that have the +2 off of one combo, and decks that have non-reverse reliant combos, like I don't know
ReZero.
what's a good example.
Goblin Slayer.
Yeah, ReZero. Yeah, decks that have a non-reverse combo that have like a good chance of multi-field in them. So any type of Riki.
ReZero.
If your opponent's
Yeah,
hitting
ReZero.
yourself with Riki to put a card on the board, then they've also
No, you
partly
don't play
mitigated.
Riki at level. You don't play Riki at level 1, but it means that you get multiple combos, which means you get multiple pluses, which means you can ram multiple
No,
turns without really caring.
But the given situation here is that you're both on level 1. When I say I'll be on the standby side. So I'm playing a standby deck. My opponent plays a level 1 combo. They bashed me. Now I have a field. I have a standby in my hand. And I played the standby instead of a global soul because I didn't draw a global soul, right?
Yes.
And so somehow I've managed to kill my opponent's field, but they've managed to recoup enough cards out of what I've just killed, which was their combo, and redo their combo, and everything is still in their hand, so they have a
They don't
strong
need to
turn.
redo. They don't need to redo their combo. There is no need to redo the
But
combo.
if they don't
in this
redo their
situation.
combo, that means the next turn that they're playing after that turn is definitely going to be a lot weaker, which means that you've gotten the turn to stabilize.
Yeah, but you have lost tempo. It's not about stability. You are far behind in a damage race.
I mean, we could
All
just
it
talk
takes
How
about
is
far
the
behind are you?
potential-
Like, what is
Okay.
the situation
Wait,
that,
wait,
like,
wait,
how
wait,
far
Four to
behind are
five
you
damage
exactly?
easily. You are 4 to 5 damage behind easily.
4 to 5 damage is not something that's ridiculously hard to recover on.
It is
It's hard.
in
It is
the
not.
grand
It
scheme of
really is
things. If you do, in the grand scheme of things, if you don't count 4 to 5 damage as like a large, yeah.
No, it's a difference, but you're not that far ahead in the game so much that you're going to die.
Don't you
And
have
if
to-
it is
You are
so much
very
of a
likely
damage
to
that you're going to
lose.
die, the fact that you're playing standby is not the reason that you've lost the
parity
game.
continues, you are basically going to lose.
No, if the fact that you've taken 4 to 5 more damage than your opponent is losing you the game, the fact that you've got a standby in your deck is very marginal in the grand scheme of things, because it only matters if you draw the standby and not the other global soul. And this is happening for multiple turns, and your opponent is able to keep the hand up.
I mean, that's what most combo decks are built around.
I'm still not seeing this combo where somehow you're able to put pressure on your opponent instead of just saying, I'm going to hit my opponent for 2/2/2 and he's just going to take it. And you're magically managed to keep your hand going.
Okay, so there's like multiple decks.
You're not relying on
like,
reverses
for example, Project Diva just has Umiyuri. AOT has the Aaron combo. It only needs 1 reverse. It gets it 1 reverse. It gets every.
Konosuba is Bunny Girl Union.
Konosuba is Bunny Girl Union. It probably wins 1 lane. Then it can stay in with the Resonate, and the early plays are very good at like winning field back.
Every deck you've mentioned so far, except Project Diva, does not consistently draw these climaxes enough for it to be a noticeable issue.
But it's like 80%. Like you have more than 80% to like draw your level 1.
No. You're gonna take the first climax, but the second turn of the climax combo. The second turn of your opponent playing a global soul for you to push the damage.
Well, you just
your
need to
opponent
draw
only
any climax, right?
Wait,
It's
let
just
Alex
draw
talk.
any climax.
Let Alex talk.
The second turn of Global Soul doesn't have to be the right climax because it's a
No,
Global
it doesn't.
Soul deck. Yeah, it doesn't. And because
No,
these
it doesn't.
decks
I agree
have
with that.
such efficient returns on their climax combos, like AOT, or because they have enough other hand returns like PD, they can fuel a second turn and a third turn of tri-laning without the need for further climax combos. And then their end game, like AOT, is stock efficient enough that even though they've bled in resources compared to the standby deck, they still, like AOT, like the West praises because it only needs 5 stock for a functional end game of 4 burns. So I don't disagree that if if this were a game of level 5 Weiss that you only die when you get to level 5, then this matchup of temperament of standby attrition versus global soul race to the finish wouldn't make sense. But the West's temperament here is level 4 is soon enough to die that the global soul deck wins. Because the gain and damage advantage accrued in first deck is more than what the standby deck can make up in second deck. That the damage and soul dealt in first deck has higher returns compared to what the standby deck can deal back delayed in second deck. So if these were just bad soul rush decks, then of course like their compression is bad. The global soul doesn't have a good compressed deck. The standby deck returns high soul counts that go in, and you make up the damage deficit gained from direct attacks off board advantage. But these are good decks. These are fully functional decks. They get high returns off their level 1 combo. They got multiples of from their level 0 setup and Rikis. So they still mitigate damage through some cancels in second deck. You can't make up that much damage back. That's the contention.
Okay, so, I've played about it a bit. So what you guys have been saying is basically, you've basically been describing how the 8 Global Soul deck aims to win against the 4 Standby deck, and I've been describing how the 4 Standby deck aims to win against the Global Soul deck.
It all comes down to you needing to cancel. That's it.
But the thing here is that this is only actually a weakness of the standby deck if I've drawn a standby where I would have preferred a Global Soul. Because otherwise, if I didn't draw the standby, then it's the same as it being a Global Soul in my deck for the function of canceling or playing the climax from my hand, because I never just drew it, right?
But then the difference is you
so
don't...
that's not a function. That's not really the weakness of the standby deck.
The difference is okay.
Like if I didn't draw the standby, if I did draw the standby and I wish it was the Global Soul, and I didn't draw the Global Soul, then yes, like what you're saying is probably going to happen, or at least is likely to happen. But outside of the specific situations where I drew the standby, B, I didn't draw the door, and C, I did want to draw the door, then this isn't really a point of contention for me.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing.
Like,
Can
it's just
I
not really the
quickly
problem.
Quickly interject.
Yeah.
The thing is, I have this assumption that I just have, that I think this is how the game is played. You always want a Global Soul Climax at level 1. This is just every time the case, always.
I do not necessarily agree with this notion, but I think this is going to be something that this is something we kind of say every single time.
Yes. Second, if you play the Global Soul Climax when you draw it, you're not gaining anything from it. You're not building the resources. And if you play this Global Soul Climax and then don't trigger standby to also gain you the field advantage, you fall behind. Which is why 4 standby decks generally, in my eyes, are high roll decks, because they need to they want to play the Global Soul at 1, and then they need to trigger the standby at level. And if they do that, then they're powerful. And if they don't do that, they generally just can't keep up with Global Soul combo decks.
Well, I think what Ken responded in turn is that the deck that plays 8 Global Souls and then is forced to play the off Global Soul because it didn't draw the right one is just a crappy deck, because it gives the standby deck, it didn't get enough resources off its first hyper efficient level 1 climax combo, yet it dealt enough soul to push the standby deck into level 2 to roll the board. And now the Global Soul deck only has Global Souls, doesn't have hyper efficient combos, doesn't have a lot of hand, etc. I think Ken has already explained that. I think I'm comfortable moving on. This dichotomy between West and East will probably come up again. Can we talk about Million Live and why it's overhyped?
We've kind of been doing this every single stream, so yeah, let's move on.
Million Live is a good example of a 4 standby deck that isn't super high roll.
Yeah, because it's not a standby deck.
But what is Million Live?
What's the off standby climax that you were playing?
Stock Soul.
Set there.
It's Hibiki.
The Hibiki, okay.
Ouch. What are we going to talk about here?
First, I want to know what level 3 endgame is paired with the 3/7 burn 2/2/2 event? Like, what if people settled on?
There's
Is there
No.
something that's settled?
no, I think Shiho and Koto are both perfectly valid options here. Shiho makes the 3/7 event more consistent because she gives you extra digging options, and Shiho gives you some auto wins against like decks that can't manage to mill their deck or forces them to play around it awkwardly.
Shiho also does not rely on reversing.
Yes, that's like the three big parts for Shiho. Kotoha, on the other end, gives you a lot more reach. Like with Kotoha and 3/7 event, you can easily kill people from 2/3, 2/4. Like that's perfectly normal to do that.
And is it perfectly normal to need to do that?
No.
Well, if you're playing standby,
No, that's like the thing. You're probably just keeping damage or a parity. So you don't even need to do that. It's just like if you fall behind, you have that sort of reach. That's like one advantage Kotoha has. Kotoha also naturally plays more healers, due to Kotoha being a healer. And I guess what's like the third thing? Apart from like the extra reach. Like the kill from 3-0 is safer with Kotoha.
There's some Million Life enthusiasts in the cast. Are there any detractors? Why does this deck suck? Or maybe they,
I
maybe
don't mean
it's
to say
undefeated,
Shiho
it's
is
great.
bad or anything, but are you like isn't the deck fine? Isn't the 3/7 event fine without actually having to decompress your opponent as a way of just either burning damage or pulling your climax out of your deck? Your
No,
opponent's
the
deck?
thing is,
Well, the
3/7 event,
idea of the 3/7 event is that it saves you. It's like it's a very efficient card. So it enables you to pursue a higher ceiling with alternate level 3s.
Yeah, you play
I
extra
think of it like
finishes with
playing a
the
main phase of
3/7 event.
Yukino.
Yes.
It's like attacking with Yukino in the main phase.
Yes.
Like it's even without Shiho, that's generally quite powerful with whatever else you have with it.
Okay, so can you
Yes.
think that it's a fully functional deck even if you don't have another like real level 3s in the front row after?
Oh
the
no, as in
3/7?
you'd still play Kotoha, but I'm saying like Kotoha plus 1 3/7. Excuse me, 3/7 event's probably enough to kill your opponent, right? If you're if they're on like 3-0 or something.
That's true.
The thing about Shiho is that she digs for the event. She encounter. There's things that Shiho does that help the deck, and one of the main weaknesses of Shiho is that if the opponent doesn't have a waiting room, she does not. If the opponent has a small waiting room. The 3/7 event creates a waiting room for you, which kind of alleviates this a bit. And the Shiho pairs very well with the Azusa Resander.
Yes.
Sure, but that's not really why the Shiho's a good pair for the 3/7. That's just the 3/7.
The 3/7
event.
the 3/7 is
The
the
3/7
main
is a
driver
good pair
here.
with the Azusa.
The 3/7 here is the
Azusa is a good
driver
pair with the
of
Shiho.
whatever is happening here. I agree.
Yes.
That just
The
happens
main
no matter
advantage,
what. So.
yeah. The main advantage though of Shiho is that compared to Kotoha is that one, she does not need reverses, and two, she does have like I think she has like a much higher ceiling in a slightly different like game state, right? So
Yes.
we can all think of like game states where Shiho basically wins you the game. Where Kotoha opponent is small deck, they don't have any climax. They don't have like any climaxes left or something. They're like one card left in deck. Right? It's not a climax, for example.
I mean, the counterpoint is that that's basically the only sort of situation where Kotoha plus events isn't enough to win the game. And then there are lots of situations where
but I mean,
the
then for the other cases,
I'll-
cases, Shiho is good enough to win you the game, for the most part, and it doesn't require any reverses. Right, that's the other argument. For the other end of Shiho's effectiveness, here's this card, she wins board for you. She doesn't need to reverse anything. It's like completely non-interactive, basically.
Yeah, sure, but it's just there are definitely situations where Kotoha has that extra reach,
yes,
which is just going to win you the game.
Yes, but one thing people can't forget with Shiho is that she digs.
Yeah, she digs, which is one of the big.
She makes this 3/7 event more consistently. She makes the 3/7 event happen more often.
How many of the 3/7 event are you playing?
3 to 4.
3 copies,
Probably 4.
but I want to run 4.
4 is like the number.
If you
I
play
think.
Kotoha, you definitely play 4. Shiho, it's like debatable whether you want 3 or 4.
Is dig super important if you play 3 copies?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
It increases the chances
That's
enough.
Yeah, I mean the deck is the 3/7 event. Right?
Because the Tamaki makes the dig a lot more, like the dig has a lot more reach because of Tamaki.
Sorry, I should also ask this. If you don't have the 3/7 event and you're playing, well, whatever melee in life, I guess, do you feel like your deck isn't doing enough?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
no,
that's
it depends. It depends. If it's built for like, if it's built so that I don't get 3/7 event, like a deck that's completely focused around double Kotoha combo, then obviously the deck is fine if you don't get 3/7 event. But if you have like a 3/7 event
that's
deck
fine.
and you don't draw the event, then I think the deck is bad. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, okay. That's about as much I wanted to.
I guess
So
a thing about Million Life White's is it has good reach, it has a strong finisher, and it's not interactable by the opponent. It does its own thing, it will always do its own thing, and the opponent can't really do a lot about it. With Kota, they can do a bit more. They can have like a very field where Kota can't breach anyway. That's possible. With Shiho, that's not really possible. But with Shiho, there's sometimes weird scenarios where opponent is very low deck, but has climaxes left. So if you play the event, they'd refresh, and Shiho doesn't do anything more. Whereas if you just do Shiho, it's maybe not enough. So there's like 2 trade-offs here for the top ends. But the deck has a very powerful top end. It's uninteractive, and that's why we think the deck is powerful.
cool.
Loud typing.
Yes, very loud. Do we want to talk more about Million Live? Like, do we want to talk about 8 standby versus the very favored 10 events Western build? Like, is that something we want to talk about?
Oh, is that 10 event build Western?
Yeah.
I think it's mostly
It's-
originated.
No, it's
From
originated from Japan, I think.
Did it? I
It's
thought
some
Tony just
mutate
pulled it out of his
log.
ass.
We just mutated it into like our own version, basically.
That's
Sure.
fair.
That's the only version I've really seen to have any success. So
People here have moved on to 8 standby. That's I think the only one I've seen with the 3/7 event, and it's just very stupid, very brave, but it works. That 3/7 event is dumb. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
It
the
is.
deck works because of the 3/7 event.
Yeah.
Not really because of climax lineups, though. I think some climax lineups support it
I
way
mean,
better.
having
I think
alpaca helps.
Yeah, you don't have to play anything. You don't have to get your level 1 combo. You don't have to do anything. You drop like 3/2s that pump your board. You would just keep winning field. They burn. You don't
I
have
think
to think
alpaca
too much
is
when you do it.
less. Man, Spark Drink kind of catapults there, honestly.
Well, Tamaki and Spark Drink. The 8 standby deck doesn't play Tamaki, right?
I don't think a standby plays the Spark Drink either.
It doesn't play Spark Drink. It only plays 4
Yeah.
of the 3/7 events.
Yes. I think Tamaki is very, very integral to why the deck is good. It opens up a lot of avenues that the deck can now do that other decks maybe can't. Like, for example, Tamaki is, I think, a thing that very often lets you just auto-beat minus soul decks. And she often enables more compressed game states. Because she's randomly a costless plus, like let's say at Tamaki is a given half plus, and you play a lot of them over turn, so you get free pluses. And she makes you clean trigger. Because if there's not because if there's a climax on top, you just brainstorm or you just move that card away via other means, and it just makes you consistently clean trigger. And for example, against the minus soul deck, if they have double priestess out, you just play a Tamaki, and if you see 2 clean triggers, you just attack twice and pass. And if you just see 1 clean trigger, you just attack once and pass. And then they have to like do the minus soul combo again, and do like swing 4 into deck that just didn't trigger a climax, which is usually pretty bad.
Okay.
cool. Let's move on.
Bang Dream.
Yeah.
Is it really really good, or is it just okay? That'd be one way to sum it up.
Japan's love child. That's it.
I think it's more popular than good, I think.
Ironically,
It is
I
good,
think it's
don't
a
get me
lot
wrong.
worse in Japan because like Japan plays around the fever combo like a lot because of all these 8 standby decks. Because if you bring out a 2/2 and you have a counter in hand, that fever combo is not going off. And Bang Dream actually struggles when it doesn't get its combo off to like regate hand. You just need to hit brainstorms.
The conversion rate in Japan for Bang Dream was actually pretty low before the second half of the season. I think around until Alberto became popular, it was not actually very good. But then Alberto came out, and then they realized, well, Moko can randomly kill from 3-0. Let's go. I think was one of the reasons.
Finishers are good, huh?
Also, Kasumi gets its reverse against Albuto. Like it gets fever off.
Yeah, somewhat. Because Alberto recently plays that wall one that doesn't get reversed against costless characters, but yeah, aside from that. But that was definitely a counter against some decks like Bang Dream.
Against Bang Dream. I think that's a knee-jerk reaction to like Bang Dream becoming more popular for like as the Albuta counter pick.
Is that a 2-of?
Well, originally they were playing the 1-0, which makes you stock with the vanilla, but I think I heard someone they will say that they took that out for the slots and the fact that if you don't get your standby off at level 1, then the 1-0 isn't enough to get you back in the game against whatever you're playing against. Whereas the 1-1 can sort of keep your hand size up and let you slowly go into whatever you're doing later on.
Okay.
That 1-1 seems not good against, early standby triggers and the like. But I guess you
It's
probably
not
just
amazing.
don't.
The 1-1 is like really bad against standby decks, which is kind of.
They played like 2 copies, and if they don't want to play it, they just get rid of it.
They just play other stuff, right? Yeah, like it's pretty hard
your level zone closer. It's not that hard.
Pretty good. Yeah, it just like it also splashes out against hits Konosuba. It hits a bunch of random rogue decks. It's pretty decent, I think.
Yeah, you're not committing to it, so.
Yeah. But Bang Dream, let's go back to Bang Dream. So the draw to Bang Dream seems to be Mocha, and the fact that it just has a bunch of high quality cards.
I think people are
singular.
Still sometimes playing Yukina, but Mocha seems to be more common. Like Bardor is like by far the most common Bang Dream build I've seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen Yukina in like a year here.
No, I haven't seen it much either.
It's just, and I think compared to all of the other standby and slow decks, the fact that you're still playing Bardor really does help, even though against some standby decks you don't necessarily get the fever. I don't think that matters too much because you're still pushing a lot of damage. Mocha pretty good.
What are the cards from the newest set that people are playing?
The EP Healer and
EP Healer, the alarm that works.
Oh yeah, that one.
They play the stock swap event.
The fever combo.
Fever combo, the bomb that pumps 2k.
Yeah, the bomb was previous set though.
Oh, that was the.
I think that 2-1 Hina the 2-1 Hina that gives global 2k on your turn. I feel like I've seen here and there.
Maybe, but that's like a weird choice.
I mean, the main
doesn't
one
really help your game plan.
I don't know if there's that much that they run that's new, apart from the fever, right?
Oh,
they got the drop search that can rearrange top 2.
I think that's generally worse than
like a rearrange top 2. Oh, that's a promo. Yeah.
Yes.
I've also seen some people check in the pastel pellets level 3 bomb to deal with Aobuto with the bodyguard.
Couldn't you just play the Kasumi 3-2 where the opponent can't back up? That's 15k base.
I think that would work too.
I think that seems
a little too small.
15k, but bodyguard can potentially hit 17k.
Yeah, but you just play bomb and then you're 17k.
No, but the thing is, the level 3 bomb also digs, so I think it's a consideration on that front.
Sure, but the thing is, the 15k burns on play. So when you hit the opponent from 3-0 to 3-1, and suddenly triple Mocha is like very good at finishing.
I think
that's really good.
It's good. I don't think they've actually come to an agreement. The bomb can be early played. It's a shitty condition, but you can still play it, and it digs. So like, there's a lot of cases where it could be useful. So I think that they're playing around with that. At least that's what I've heard within my locals and within the people in my area.
It seems playable. I would like to see how people take.
I think the other Bang Dream deck that some people play, mostly in the West, is 8 Gates with the Pastel Shell, the Pastel Pellet Shell, and the Ayalisa Restand Top End combo. Which is basically like another Summer Pockets variant with like a better top end, but
It's also worse than Sunshine.
Then Sunshine.
yes,
Yeah.
it's also worse than Sunshine. So
I heard it's
That's
a
the
glass
high-
cannon deck.
Isn't that the high roll deck that tries to get level 3s out level 1?
no.
Oh
No,
my
it's
It's the
god.
one that
Dude,
restands
don't- oh
the
my
Lisa that
God.
burns 1 on attack to do like
Yes.
8 attacks or something.
Yeah,
Okay,
something
sure.
like that.
You burn 1 3
Well,
times.
no,
you lose
I know
one
what I know what the top end is, but what's the mid game?
It's the Summer Buckets
2-1s.
combo. Summer Bucket
The
combo.
2-1 that combos on a door and comes out early.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a +2, potential +2 instead of a stock 1+1.
Yes. It's Minami, and you can add 2 characters.
Yep.
Is
Cool, I guess.
the Wind Fever Pastel Palette deck any good?
No.
I've seen a few people pop up here and there, and honestly, the 11k heal looks like it would be good, but when I think about it, you can't put 3 copies of that card on the board without some gimmicky stuff. And
Yeah.
it just seems very
Just enabling fever is very hard.
yeah,
deck,
definitely.
I think.
Yeah.
And the payoff
It
isn't
just
even
seems
that
like
big. The payoff is the burn 3. That's like
It's burn 3.
Project
attack
Diva
something,
doesn't
wasn't
need
it?
to do anything for its burn 3. Like Project Diva just gets it for free. Like why?
I guess I
Why-
can differentiate the
why
two in the
pay-
fact
Or
that
they
It's
have
Shiroha-
to have 2 CXs.
That's not a real
Bars.
competitive deck.
I think you can just say it's different because Shiroha is low investment, and if you don't kill your opponent there, you're still kind of happy. But no, I haven't really seen it very much. I just noticed it once or twice somewhere.
It topped recently in Nagoya.
I think Bang Dream is very popular. It's a popular IP, and there's a lot of different ways you can like customize the deck because it has a lot of like card quality, and you can tech for a lot of things, like the 1-0 Remi that makes things chase. That the deck will always stay relevant.
Yeah, for
Okay.
a long while.
Hard to restrict.
It
too.
also has an expansion coming out. Fantastic.
Yeah, it has a
Yeah.
new expansion coming out. It's
Ah.
hard to restrict because there's just too many cards you need to hit.
Yeah, if you hit one
Oh,
thing,
actually-
they can easily replace it with another.
Sorry, who was the guy who lived in Japan again?
That's me.
Honeythief.
Yeah. Are people in Japan happy or unhappy about the fact that the new set's coming out on the 1st of January?
Oh, I haven't even asked. I don't know.
Because I think card shop people are definitely not happy about that.
Yeah, they're probably pissed, but yeah, I don't know about the actual
Why
players.
would they release it on first? That's so.
Yeah, that doesn't
Year
make
new
sense.
Isn't
Bang Dream.
everything closed on first?
Yes,
Yes.
everything.
Or not card stores, apparently.
Well,
Not this year.
yeah.
Maybe they'll change it. I don't know.
That might be something that's changed. That's still in like 3 months.
Comes out on a Wednesday, right? Not even like a Friday.
That's the
Yeah.
weird part.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's just cool, I guess.
New year, new Bang Dream.
Yeah.
All right.
Do we have
Shoutouts.
any other decks we want to talk about before we move on to talking about like That's all
I
thoughts?
guess Goblin Slayer.
Goblin Slayer.
Right.
Yep.
yeah, sure. So the big divide with Goblin Slayer is Japan plays 8-gate and they play like the TD Goblin Slayer, a bunch of chippy top end, and they kind of rely on the relative power and consistency of the level 1 combo to carry them through and apply pressure against standby decks and the like. And then the West likes Priestess because it's a cantripping neg 2 soul, which is pretty powerful.
I'm not even
What do you
sure.
guys think?
Like even in
Wait,
the
isn't
West,
Japan
there's,
on
like,
door
split
standby now?
between-
Like 2 or 3 standby triggers?
Yep, they play both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
Standby
Priestess
Goblin
is
Slayer
door
door
or all
combo.
standby.
The
I
Goblin
think
Slayer,
Priestess
like
is
the level,
non-existent.
the level 3 door combo is kind of awkward in Japan because it's on reverse, and
Yeah.
like there's a lot of
Yeah.
8 standby decks that you can't breach.
Yeah, you also can't beat Albusa, so it's that.
Yeah.
But I think it's also the 3-3 event that they're looking at. The bounce counter.
Yeah.
They always play one copy of the 3-3 event. I think some
Do
people
they
even
play
play the
the
3-4
3-2
event
that
on one copy.
searches?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
So
they did. They
you
played that
just-
as like 1 or 2 of.
Okay.
It's easy to get it.
And
Because otherwise
outsider-
playing an event at 1 is like dumb.
An outsider looking in might be puzzled why there's a flip in like regional tendencies, because the West is usually baffled why the East likes minus soul and onboard mitigation so much, but here the competitive West scene is more concerned about the priestess combo, which apparently Japan is not into. So what do you have some explanation about that flip?
Yes, it's actually pretty easy because priestess doesn't win board in Japan, because they play
Yeah,
it
there's
standby
that.
decks.
Because it's so
Yeah.
small.
It's
Yeah.
just small. Even without standby decks, it's smaller than a lot of the other minus soul decks. Or
No, it's
alternatively,
not. If you played a 2-1,
it's less. It's definitely less flexible. No, I
Is it
mean
less flexible?
it's definitely smaller than RSO. And
I think it's smaller than Illya.
It's I think
No,
it's
it's same
roughly the
size as
same power as
Amelia.
Amelia, but Amelia also has a lot more flexibility with all the other tools it has in the deck.
Is it smaller
feel
than
like-
Kotori? We're including Lucio here.
It's same size, isn't it? Like 500 smaller, maybe. No, actually.
I think it's similar, but Lucio
When does
back row
Kotori
is
gain the
definitely just
2k
a
power?
good card.
When you drop the
when
marker.
Only when you drop
decks
when
too
you drop the
strong.
marker.
Okay,
goes to
so it's
14,
same
I
power.
think.
Yeah, same power. So 13k usually, or 12.5, I guess.
On top of that, I'm also not a fan of the draw 2 discard 1 text, because ideally you should have refreshed well at level 1, and I think top
It's just
3 add
digging-
1 is a
digging
lot
through
nicer.
a good deck, I think.
Yeah, it's not fantastic.
Because
and-
Goblin Slayer refreshes thanks to the events. Unless you're like nearly
Well,
through your second refresh somehow, I guess it's just digging through the quality
yeah,
deck.
and
I think
if you
the read
haven't
is
got the
perfectly
pants,
fine.
then top 3s. I think it could be better, but I don't think it's the worst thing ever to happen either.
If it was,
It's
for
just
example,
one
come in
reason for it
place,
to look good.
if it was come in place search, I think it would be received even better.
Yeah,
but that
even
also
top
sounds
3 I'd
very
be
dumb.
happy about.
You reckon?
I don't like the fact that you have to go through 2. Like
It was
with
card play
if you already
search.
have the pants.
If it's card and play search, you won't be able to loop the climax as easily.
Yeah, that's true.
You'd probably
Oh,
play
point.
4 of the PR then. 4 of the expensive
Cowgirl,
PR.
the
Yes.
3980 PR.
Wait, you played that card? Really?
It digs for successive climaxes.
It's the only way to dig for
I
climaxes in that deck.
suppose.
What?
Besides Priestess herself.
The Ken said something.
No, I just said I
He said,
suppose.
I suppose.
Oh, okay. Sure. I think Goblin Slayer, regardless of how you play it, like the deck is entirely carried by the strength of its level 1 combo and how many level 1 combos you get off, which is also why I think the deck should play for Riki, which I'm not sure are played in any Japanese list.
I see it's low. I see like
It's
2.
0 or 1.
Yes, which is like I think very not smart, but even in the West,
I
people
think-
are starting to run like 3 Riki in the deck, which I think is silly.
I think the idea is that when you play Riki, you definitely speed up the game because you've put a card in your clock and you're probably going to attack with the Riki as well. And they're kind of happy to just have 2 Goblin Slayers and 1 whatever attacker, but
Yeah, but especially
slightly
against
slower game,
standby
but-
decks. Yeah.
yeah.
That's,
No, of course.
that's the main
but
difference.
In
That you only have
general,
1 combo instead of 2.
no, but I mean, you're more likely to have more copies of the combo after the first one
Yeah.
with Riki, but you've also sped up the game, which I don't think Goblin Slayer is necessarily happy about.
But against
Like, it's not
standby
bad
decks,
at
you want
fast
to
games,
speed up
but
the
slow
game.
is fine.
The thing is, Goblin Slayer is happier about it than standby decks are usually.
Yes.
Can you expand on why they would be happy about it? Is it because the Goblin Slayer doesn't attack at a high enough power against a standby deck who's standby because they hit
It's
one
because you
first?
don't want the standby deck to accrue resources, and therefore,
If you
It-
like, if you hit them harder early, like the 1/1 like you can usually win 1 lane with the player and just roll that advantage and keep playing global soul climaxes and let them never catch up. Basically,
Mm.
Actually, yeah, the
Chaser
chaser
Chef
loses
wrong.
value when you play Riki.
okay, that's true.
I
Like
guess
the
yeah,
chaser
with
benefits
Riki.
from his lower level 0.
Well, if you attack more at level 0, it means your opponent's more likely to go level 1
But-
before you do, which means that they get to potentially stand by their 2-2 out, and then now their 2-2 gets to fight your Goblin Slayers, which
Well,
probably not
if you're
big
playing
enough to
against
defend against 2-2s.
Fantasia, which standbys into the front, that's like a thing. But if you play against like a standby deck that doesn't,
Oh no, but I mean,
Stand
you
by in
can
front.
control. Your opponent gets to attack with the 2-2 one turn earlier, in regards to when your Goblin Slayer hit the field. And when the 2-2 moves out earlier, it means that you're less likely to take advantage of the fact that Goblin Slayer is 7k on defense, or 6k plus support. Oh no, that's fine then. But against standby decks, they're probably not going to be playing in such a way that you're going to hit level 1 earlier. Sometimes it'll happen, but
but if they play very conservative, then like just try fielding playing a climax puts them way behind.
I don't really think that tri-fielding and playing a climax, which doesn't give you a card back, necessarily puts them behind. Because now they can put out their strong stuff and
Yeah, but
potentially
you
counter
like-
your Goblin
I'm
Slayer.
not sure they can. Are they going to answer
No, I
your
think-
field perfectly?
And
You
they'd
get,
still be
like,
level
one
I think if you
one.
play, I think if you
wouldn't-
play 3 level 0s and you hit your opponent to level 1, they can fairly reasonably answer all 3 level 0s that you've played down.
What's an
Yeah,
example?
but
That's
they're not
yes.
going to have. They're not going to have
Like,
good cards in every single row. That's not
Next
No,
necessary.
but
standby
no,
versus global storm.
We're kind of going back to where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
let's
refrain
start.
from that talk. Let's refrain from that.
Alex was saying
That's
something.
fine. I was gonna ask what how about I steer more to just generally Goblin Slayer, because the West is, from what I understand, the West is scared of the deck, and especially like for English mostly players who might tune in because they're interested in this deck specifically. Is this deck a problem? Like, I know the tenor, the mood of the discussion about Goblin Slayer has been very muted compared to the kind of reaction that the deck gets from people. So
I think I think the deck has had a lot more hype going into the deck, and then people played it and realized that it's actually not that bad. It's not that powerful.
It's not broken.
Yeah.
It's just a good deck.
The level 1 combo is very good, but the level 1 combo isn't everything. And the priestess
Okay.
just ended up being less powerful than people thought it would be.
Can I interject? I think that Goblin Slayer, more than anything, is the ultimate noob destroyer deck. Like, this is the sort of deck that beginners cannot possibly face without losing their shit. Like,
is this
Like
build
Logic.
specific or just generally? Like, is this only about priestess builds or just in general, Alf?
I think
in general,
general.
like if they fight the Goblin Slayer level 1 combo, not only is it like randomly as good as Persona 5, one of the, dare I say, premier wall decks of English, but it also does other good stuff, and it is more consistent because it has a Riki, it has all sorts of other tools that Persona 5 wishes it had, and it even has the same sort of stupid events that people complain about in Persona 5. This is going to be a deck that flourishes on its reputation as a Japanese boogeyman, and that is going to convert into being an even more terrifying boogeyman to a lot of people in English. And with that in mind, that's why I don't think it's going to be as bad as everyone says. Because ultimately, the Western world does not take Weiss nearly as seriously as Japan, from a competitive sense. There's not going to be anyone dropping Attack on Titan or dropping Konosuba and buying Goblin Slayer just to win. So it's definitely going to have a much
Is that
worse.
true? That feels like very wrong.
I
to
think you
me.
underestimate how
That
popular
feels-
Goblin Slayer is.
I think
I think
people
you
will actually
underestimate-
buy Goblin Slayer, but the rest of what you said, somewhat agree with.
I think you're overestimating the sort of person who would like the generic Swiss player in an English tournament. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
say
the
this
Swiss
having
player
been-
plays
I
whatever
just-
the hell he likes.
I don't
No,
think
I agree with
like,
that,
in
though.
Japan that's any different. I think
Japan
I
has
think
a
that-
larger
I think-
total number of people that are invested in the game, and such people are happy to spread what
Yeah,
they
but then
think.
there's Shioko
thoughts.
topping and like Genai.
And Gene.
Like, People,
No,
people
but
mess
those
around
guys
in
are
Japan
definitely
too.
outliers. No, they're outliers.
They're absolutely outliers.
Like-
He's right.
I-
That's
I
not.
think
Look at
they're,
the grand scheme of-
they're outliers, but when you have like tournaments with 600 people, the probability of getting an outlier up to top 4 is a lot lower. So I don't think they're
But there
bad.
aren't
also-
that many.
also-
there really aren't that many outliers. There really aren't.
If you
Well,
look
you
at the
also have, like,
total number
next-
of people who top near standard across the season, and then take like those 2 decks, I think it's fair to say that they're outliers.
But what
I
about
think they're
decks
absolutely
that are very old and bad but still have high rep because they're popular, like Cinderella Girls? Like, I don't know.
I don't
like
think
generally
Cinderella
I
old.
don't
Girls
think
is
that has
that
high
bad.
rep. I don't think it is high
Yeah.
rep. I think it is like.
I don't think its rep
It
is
has-
that high.
It didn't even get
No, I
top
said-
15.
Like, yeah, well, what's the lowest rep that was put on the graph was like 2%. So if 1.5% of people play Cinderella Girls, is that? Well, I guess
High
that is
rep.
relatively that is relatively high rep, I guess. But right now everything's so spread out. So Overlord.
That's what
I think someone
I
called
think
him.
I think that was someone's parents.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay, sorry.
Going back to my point about how I don't think Goblin Slayer is going to, destroy a meta or anything. English is not it's not an environment where a set can come in and completely destroy a metagame. If it was, then Bang Dream would have already done it.
Well,
SAO
as-
would have
first of-
already.
I think Sunshine would have done it, to be honest. But yeah,
Yeah, I agree, and it hasn't. It just has
That-
not. It's unbanned,
yeah.
and it's not really a problem. And yes, your survey says that a lot of people think Sunshine's broken, but it does not have the conversion. It does not have the representation. And most of the people who top and are, very renowned in the English community are not calling for it to be banned because there's no representation problem. There's no conversion problem. And there's
I feel
honestly just no
like-
power level problem.
I feel like there is a power
English-
level problem, but it's hard to represent that in conversion in English tournaments because people
Okay.
people don't travel for
This
starters.
is becoming very
depending on the region.
specific for
No,
the
I
English
think-
metagame.
Okay, it is. Okay.
First of
sure.
all, and also like English power level is high enough to like
Let's.
where Sunshine isn't broken and where Goblin Slayer won't.
If we're
be
gonna talk
broken.
about forecasts, let's just talk about the Japanese meta.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about English another day. I actually want to talk about
that. Even though Goblin Slayer looks scary, that the temperament here is that decks have the tools to handle it in either
Yes.
format.
Yes.
No, it's less.
Okay,
It's less
can we
that.
do
and it's-
forecasts?
Yeah,
Oh,
look,
wait, sorry.
it's
Yeah.
the
Can
same
I
for
add?
every
Can I
metagame.
add
Let
one
me
thing?
just end with one thing. It is so rare in any card game that one archetype comes out and breaks a format, unless it's a format that's already broken and no one should care about it anymore. And
Sounds
Weiss
like
does
you
not have a
here.
broken format. We're looking at stuff like Chaos, and we're looking at stuff like Modern in Magic. Like formats like that can be broken by one deck. No one cares. They're not good competitive formats anyway. Well, Chaos might be, but it also has lots of other problems. Weiss
So-
is not that fragile. It's definitely resilient.
Okay.
So where do the regions go
Um,
from here now then?
well,
Can we
sorry,
start with Japan?
Wait,
Yeah, let's
sorry.
start with Japan. This is the
Wait, I wanted to say something. So when Alfred said people were complaining about the Persona 5 event, what are people complaining about? Like, is that
Notice.
Is that
This was
actually-
early on. This was just really early on, where
Okay.
they were complaining because they think that you should be able to establish a board and then counter fairly because counters are fair, right? But then Persona bounces
Yeah.
your card and then they get board for free, and that's not fair. This was ages ago, and I remember specifically having to deal with this. And I was just like, "Come on, man! It's just a tool. Just deal with it."
Well, I think
not
it's
even that much
strong,
to
but
decide.
it wasn't oppressive.
I agree.
Because
I don't think I never thought it was oppressive. I thought it was a very good tool, and it was good against like ReZero, good against mirrors and stuff. And that's
wasn't
a good feature. It's a good feature of a deck to be annoying but not oppressive. That's just good. It's a
Yeah,
healthy
yeah.
thing for a metagame to have. But people complain about it because they like to complain. That's all.
I was a bit confused because you put it in the same line as what sounded like the torch, which I
Oh
didn't
no,
imagine
no,
people
no,
really
nothing
complain
like
about.
that.
Well,
Well,
it's
I
similar.
thought-
It's a check
Uh,
for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the
JP
torch is the
meta.
direct
Japan,
Move on, move
Japan
on, move
meta.
on.
Okay.
Look,
Yeah.
we should really only talk about
Matthew.
Wait,
Is Matthew
talk
still
about
here?
what? Yeah, I'm still here.
Japan meta forecast. Go.
we should
Take
only
more.
really talk about the only meta that is actually affected by the ban list, right? because no other metagame is going to be significantly affected.
Yes, don't interrupt. Let's
that's
talk
fine.
about Japanese forecast.
I think that, or at least in my opinion, we're still going to see a lot of Bang Dream and a lot of Million Live, and still a lot of Standby here. I actually think that Love Live and Love Live Sunshine are going to do really well. I know a lot of people don't think very highly of the original Love Live. This is just my personal opinion, but I think that the Maki finisher is really good combined with the Ellie early play, and will do really well against a lot of the decks that we have here. Combined with 2 Global Soul climaxes, I think it's probably going to do well. Same thing with Love Live Sunshine, especially since it has the
Does the stock swap refresher
finisher.
engine have anything to do with why you think Love Live will be relevant?
Original Love Live? Yes. Just because it has access to that, it gives it a lot of, I think, power against decks that try to get a lot of stock, like the event with Million Live, the 3/7 Million Live deck. So I think it'll work really well. I also think that since Aobuta is really popular, it's not going to taper off. We're still going to see it everywhere. And that's about it for the big.
Is Hinagi dead for good?
I think we can finally say that it's dead.
No, we can't. No, we can't. We cannot say that.
I did not believe that it was dead before. Like, I thought it was still going to show up, and it still did. And it was around me just a little bit whenever I went to the big tournaments. But now there's no reason to play it compared to Darling and the Franks.
Let me know the next time you lose to triple Yuko, no hand Hinologi players. Just let me know.
Okay, I can let you know. Yeah, other than that, I don't really know if anything older is going to see a resurgence.
Well, we could look at future sets. You know, we have Symphogear coming out soon. We have Saikano coming out soon. Review Starlight.
I can see Saikano doing something. But I don't know that much about this.
Yeah, this is like the basis of speculation, basically.
Yeah. I think just Saikano in general is super popular, so.
And Saikano is popular, so it probably does something. Like,
Yeah.
it does
And the
healing
Limited
or
is interesting, so.
Do you know what Japan thinks about the Saikano finisher? Or
So from the few things I've seen from my 2 regions, which is Toyama and Nishikawa, I think it's decent, but it takes a lot of slots, so they're not really sure.
You don't play all 4 of them. There's no way you play all 4.
You won't play the level 0.
Just don't play 4 of everything.
I think so. Like, I think if you can keep a set and send them into memory, you don't really have to play much, actually. But we don't know yet, so that's the thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of set to be reviewed.
Look, there's incidental memory. There's like check top 4 runner.
Symphogear we know. Symphogear we know that. All the
that
cards.
card being 11k heal with hexproof and can't be backup is already pretty good. So
that's
If you burn, you burn. If you don't, you're still.
Yeah. And it's on a door. It's on a door. We love
for,
that.
For Symphogear, I don't know. I haven't seen much Symphogear here. So I don't know if they just think that it's bad and don't play it. So I can't really tell. I don't know the deck too well. But it's never been a.
Because card prices went up a lot.
Maybe they're stocking up.
Did they go up? I thought they were getting a reprint set.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah.
There's a reprint set and the prices are really expensive. I don't know why.
Well, the old cards do look a lot nicer in general.
Prices are all tied to like UUT and Big Web, all deciding to raise prices, not necessarily player hype.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I wouldn't put too much stock in that.
And then that's
Selling
about it.
4
Finally,
for 40 USD.
One thing I wanted to mention, in the tier lists, I'm the only one who has Haruhi anywhere. I think that it's actually decent and well positioned against some decks, but not all of them, so that's why I don't have it in A tier. But I think that some of the good players here agree as well. It just is a high roll deck and not too consistent. So that's why it's not higher, but I think that's one of the decks that we'll see. Just a little bit.
Doesn't it have like a problem with the 8 standby deck?
I haven't played against 8 standby a lot with Haruhi, so I'm not too sure. But I think the one thing that they were mentioning is that the cat ear Mikuru is absolutely
It's good
stupid.
against Million Live. It's
That card's really good against things that want to kill your opponent with a climax combo.
Yeah, and so it's
Yes,
really
which
it's
is
bad
not
against
really 8
Million
standby.
Live. Yeah.
I think the shuffle time Nagato is also quite good against standby decks.
So yeah, it's good. It's
Shuffle
also
time.
good. It's also good against -2 cell decks if
Yes.
they're doing it late. Because with standby, you're level 3 earlier. So that's when you were doing the discussion about how you are too far behind in damage. It depends on if your deck is built to deal with that. And Haruhi is basically the deck that is built to deal with that. So I think that's why it's showing up and topping. But I don't think it has very high representation because it's just a really old series.
Finding the card's pretty tough now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also like it's impossible to find like some
Who
of the
wants to
cards
buy
here
my
in
Haruhi?
local things.
I'll buy your
I have a
Haruhi.
Haruhi deck.
I'll buy it. I'll buy it.
Sick.
And yeah, aside from that, I don't really know. But I think most people are still
Basically-
just gonna play Bang Dream. Like
the,
Bang
ta-
Dream
the
and
takeaway
Million
from
Life.
this. Yeah, the takeaway from this is that Japan's just gonna play idols. It's
Yeah.
just gonna happen.
No, the bands
I'm not
aren't
even
idle.
kidding.
You
And
can't forget
standbys.
Sal. You can't forget Sal.
Yes.
Yes.
You want to know something?
Oh yeah.
Hey, there are idols in Sal, though.
Alicization has done nothing, and that's really weird to me.
I think
They
Oh,
just
it's
revealed
just
they just revealed a promo
Gosh.
of the early play 1/1 anti-change stock bomb. I think that was just revealed
What are the
today.
notable cards in Elicization? Assuming that we get an expansion for the second half, like what are the cards that you
I
keep
don't think
check
there.
on?
I don't think there is
Kirito.
anything notable except top end.
Kirito is really good. The rest
I think
not
the
much.
level 3 back row Alice is quite powerful, but
Yes, that also works with the.
everything else is fairly generic, I think. Kirito's solid,
Yes.
The
He's not
Yujo
a-
is maybe okay. The money counter.
yeah. Maybe.
What?
Really depends on expansion, but
Yeah.
Uh,
Maybe the admin stuff gets somehow. I don't know. It's probably too limited. But it has like the union for. Is it tap self or is it tap 2? The back.
Tab 2.
Okay,
Tab
then
2.5.
forget it. Okay, sure. Then forget it. Yeah.
Just
looks
just
like-
a quick note. I don't think any of the other regions are going to have a big shift because neither Milky nor Hinalogi are huge forces. So there's not really a need to shift, like talk about meta shifts when there's no meta that shifts. I think that they're just going to
Well,
keep
that should
playing
be
what
up to
they're
the people
playing.
who.
I'll let you
I
keep wrapping
think-
up, but Honey, before you go, do you want to do a shout out? Because it looks like you have to go.
Yeah, just a quick shout out to actually a lot of people on this cast who really helped me, I guess, just grow as a player and do a lot of research. And now I'm in Japan, so I'm glad I'm able to help for a little bit. And that's about it. No one here will understand what I'm saying, so I'm not going to send them this video. But yeah.
All right. Thank you, Honey.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So you can summarize
Thank
it
you.
for them.
see
Thanks,
you.
guys.
See you time.
Um,
All right. Well, look, on that note, I think we start wrapping here.
I think
all in all,
Sunshine is gonna pick up a lot of rep in the West.
I
Yeah,
think so
in the
too.
I
West.
think a
Yes.
lot, yeah. Yeah,
think so
it
as
will.
well.
It's just an obviously
Other
powerful
than
deck.
that, I'm not sure.
Notably,
I think Albuta is gonna be explored more in the West.
notably
Yeah, you already see a
for-
lot of people in the West trying to pick up
Yes.
the deck now.
Yes.
Notably for
But we
North
can wait for the English
America,
release.
right before Nats, not just one set but two sets released that will have had no real competitive play in the circuit. The expansions
JoJo's.
for Saikano and for Review Starlight will both be on the eve of US Nats, so that'll be interesting. I think we
Re-
might all remember
Review
2016.
could become broken.
Takapo
Well,
won. like,
following
immediately.
Bushiroad set trends, yeah. First set boring, second set boom.
Yeah, look at Heologic, look at
if
Bang Dream.
if Kaoruko gets like proper support, the deck is like top tier.
I think a
But
bunch
that's
of
a
good
very big
standby
if.
targets would
But
also help.
the problem is it's based off the mobile game, so there's less character slots for Karuko.
Yeah, but you only need
Yeah,
like
but
one
everything
or two
looks for
good
review
cards.
anyway.
Yeah, you only need like one or
I
two
think
Roku cards for
I
this one,
think
and then it's
I
fine.
think 8 win needs a lot more than 1 or 2 cards, unless it's like an incredibly broken, like on triggering wind, do something absurd. Like it needs to be a few cards more than that.
Pay one, salvage one when you trigger wind.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds pretty decent.
Pay one,
It's like
standby
putting 8
one
gates.
when you trigger a win.
that,
Pay
that
one,
pretty
sounds
standby
pretty good,
one.
actually.
Wait a minute.
That actually sounds really.
Okay, so
Uh,
is there anything else people want to add?
No, I think
look,
it's time to wrap.
Shoutouts.
yeah.
Okay.
Shoutouts and shoutouts from everybody. I don't have anything to say. Shout out to Strictly Broken TCG.
Just
right.
chill, man.
Wow, shout out to Strictly Broken TCG for the best card prices.
When are we gonna see content from you guys? There's like a content page on the website, and I check. I want to see some.
I will message you when I make content. I'm still doing my thesis, and after I finish my thesis writing,
All right.
which is like end of September.
Yeah.
Killua, any shoutouts?
I guess I'll shout out to my local group, Wild Wild Rice.
Oh,
Do
I'll
they
shout
you're
have
out.
a
from there.
YouTube a
Yeah,
YouTube channel or anything that we can
Oh,
reach
okay.
them at?
We have like the Twitch page that we stream every Friday night and Wednesday night.
Yeah, you're an up and coming content producer. Cool.
Yeah.
Hooray. Who's next?
Zabuton.
Hi.
I understand you have a blog to show.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter. I'm writing English stuff right now as well. I guess I'll just chuck my my Twitter account and someone can share it on the video or something.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do that.
Yeah, cool. Shout out to myself, I guess, in that respect. That'll.
As you do. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah. I guess 2 shoutouts. One to the Virginia Weiss group who hosted me for a year, and they're a group of very committed, passionate players. So I really appreciated them. And also shout out to my blog wsalmanac.wordpress.com with a resource list for English-speaking Weiss community and monthly-ish roundups to summarize the latest content. So check me out.
Will this video make the cut?
I'll have to watch it to see.
He's got a very
I have-
strict quality control regime.
My hope is
I think
eventually people send me their content with summary, so I don't have to watch literally everything to evaluate whether it makes
I mean
it.
you
Send
can.
you.
There's a very easy summary for this. People discuss whether standby or global soul is.
Yeah.
We should have a
Then
video.
no,
Get out
we should
with
have a
fists.
video where people fight about that.
By people, you mean
Alright,
like
so,
me versus everyone else. But
Hey
yeah.
man, I'm on the standby side.
All right, sorry.
We can do a
I
first
forgot about
to
you.
10,
Thanks.
everybody.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Pattywagon.
Just so I don't sound like an asshole to my friends who actually watch this, can I shout out to my friends from Good Game Central? Because I've been going to locals recently.
Sure. Do you have a?
Good on you.
Did they have, like, a
They
link
go
a
to
YouTube
Macquarie a
channel?
lot, so I'll also
Okay.
shout out. No, not really.
Okay.
I guess we should also shout out to Baranda because we always use his Banlist update
His graphic.
image.
Good on him.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, thanks for running Macquarie.
I love that.
It's
tournament.
a really good it's a really good tournament, I think. Maybe one day when Bushiroad sanctions non-Bushiroad events, it'll be up there with the greats. But for now, it'll be the primary thing in Japanese Weiss in Australia. Going back a sec, Pattywagon, you said you want people to send you things. Where are they sending you things?
West Kai. No, not the
You
West Kai.
you can contact me on Discord, but there's a contact page on the wsalmanac.wordpress.com page.
Very
Contact page.
We'll have a link for that.
Very good. Just put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom, do you have any shout outs you want to make that aren't strictly broken TCG?
Shout out to Game Castle Weiss, my local kind of play group here in the Bay Area, and shout out to my friends at IGT. That's about it.
Cool.
Shout out to Canada for having
Hell
great
yeah.
Wise players and a great Wise community. Thank you.
I'm watching you, Tony. I'm watching you. I don't really have any shoutouts.
Okay.
But,
do you guys have like a deck that you think that you're sure about that you
Oh
want?
yeah, what are we playing? What are we playing? Are we gonna reveal that on this
So-
cast?
That's a cute way to end it. Okay.
What do you mean? What are you playing?
What
For
are we
WGP?
playing for our
I guess
competitive?
you're not playing.
competitive
Oh, for the
Wise?
next tournament.
Yes.
we don't have
Yes.
WGP here. That's not a fair question.
Unfortunate.
Okay, if there were double GP.
Yes. What do
That's
you
a
think
very
is the
hard
best deck
question.
right now?
I mean, it doesn't have to be the best
Okay.
deck. What are you
Best
going
deck
to
or
play?
what
What are you
you're
going to play?
playing.
No, best deck is uninteresting. What are you going to play? It
Okay.
doesn't have to be the best deck.
Well, I don't have a WGP, so I haven't really seriously thought about it, but the deck I've been playing for the past 2 months is Kadokawa with 1 gold bar, 4 book, and 3 pants.
Is it like Bunko
Nice.
or Fushimi?
Oh man.
Kadokawa
one
Sneaker
gold
Bunko.
Oh, the one
okay.
gold bar build, right? Oh,
1 gold bar, because I played 3 gold bars at one point and I fucking hated it.
I think I've seen that build. Yeah,
All right.
Okay.
it's crazy.
Um,
Play like the level 0 time machine.
Yes, that card is awesome.
I'm most likely playing Million Live or Milky Homes, tending towards some variant of 10 event, probably.
I'll be playing Sunshine, probably, for the foreseeable future.
I'll probably
Wow.
be playing Overlord or 8 Standby Fantasia until Psychono 2 comes out.
I
I'm
only
almost.
play-
Yeah, go on, Patty.
I only play one deck, and I was a little disappointed to see that didn't get a lot of rep in these tier lists this time.
Did I not put it in?
I'll try to prove you guys wrong. I've been trying to adjust the Kimono Friends build a bit
Oh.
to accommodate latest developments, but
Is it
no,
playing too
I'm
soft?
not as optimistic this year. I've been seriously thinking about that. I got crushed by a Soul Rush Review Starlight deck a couple nights ago, and I think I might want to do that. I want to do that to people.
Time to test the 2 soul.
Doesn't matter how good you are if you take soul counts of 4-5-4 in first deck.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how good the opponent is, so I might do that.
Sick. Okay, light cheap on it. What are you going to play for your fictional WGP?
Look, I haven't played competitive Japanese format in quite a while. The only deck I've been playing and actually tuning is Yuna because it's the only deck I've bought,
Aw,
like
shit.
aside from sneaker memes. So I guess my default answer is actually Saikana when Flat comes out. If I had to play the WGP, I'd almost certainly just play that. Like I already have all the set 1 cards. And I can definitely see that deck being very powerful. It could even be 8 standby, who knows? But realistically, I'm just playing Konosuba in English because why the hell would I play anything
No, you'll
else?
be playing in the WSCL, right?
If I can get there, yeah. It's the dates have come out. I don't know if I'm free on that day, but we'll see. Because they like to put it on Mondays. It's so frustrating.
What?
Um,
No, we don't.
what do you mean? What?
Is it?
The WSEL WGP last
Yeah.
chance qualifiers?
Yeah,
Are
they're
you
on separate.
are you trying to tell me what my local tournament organizers have been
No,
putting out
I was
WGP
joking
and
about how you're
Steamfest
going to
Do you
play
actually
Konos-
get locals in Melbourne?
Maybe
Do
it's
I go to
Monday.
locals?
No,
Maybe
do
it's
locals
they even
Monday
happen?
in Australia.
Well, the finals is on Monday in Australia.
Yeah, we have locals. We've got Thursday locals, which I'd never go to because I'm dead tired. And we've got Friday locals that are just small. I'm always testing Pokemon or something, so I don't go to those.
Oh, okay.
What Pokemon decks is everybody playing?
Wait a minute.
I only
Okay,
have one
let's wrap it
Pokemon
up.
deck.
I heard
Yeah, look,
JoJo TK is pretty good.
Alpha on the outro.
look. Yeah, let's do that. Look, if you want to talk to any of us on this cast, we'll have contact details and stuff. Plus, you can just hit most of us up on the Y Schwartz Global Community Group, where a lot of us are, moderators, and a lot of us are happy to talk. Don't be scared. We don't bite. Well, some of us might bite. I don't bite. Or you can hit us up on the Card Games Discord. There's links in Reddit and there's links in the global community. If you want to be more direct about it, leave a comment on this video. Chances are someone will respond. whether that be us or whether that be someone else who was on this cast and wants to chime in. And if you want to, subscribe, leave a like, whatever, do all of that. If you don't want to, that's fine. We don't put up enough content for me to, say this without shame. But it really does. It really does mean a lot to us if you comment and engage in discussion, because we're just here to make everyone a bit more taking life a bit more seriously is what I've always wanted people to do. Because as you can tell, it's not a simple game. We've had this massive discussion, respectfully, might I add. We've had this discussion during this cast. We've been yelling at each other with different viewpoints, all of which, are defensible, and it all comes from differing mindsets. There's a lot to think about in this game, and it would really make me and everyone here happy if you all thought about it a bit harder as well, because it's just a really interesting game. So, yeah, leave a comment, hit us up if you've got any questions, if you've got anything you want to discuss. We're always happy to discuss things. And from all of us here at Top Tier Tiers and all of the guests we've had, thank you for listening. Thank you to everyone for coming on. I don't know how short the notice was. I've been out of the loop. But it's been a pleasure, as always.